guys ready? All right. Welcome. Thank you all for braving the weather out there and hopefully having a productive meeting this evening. So, welcome to the regular meeting of the City of Delray Oaks City Hall, Tuesday, November 26th at 6 p.m. And we're in the Charlie Benson Memorial Hall. May we please have a roll call?
Councilmember Gagliotti?
Here.
Councilmember Lintel?
Here.
Councilmember Getzel?
Here.
Vice Mayor Clark?
Here.
Mayor Burke?
Here. All right. Jerry, can you start us off with the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can you tell me, is Reverend Pasiania here? All right, we won't be having an invocation this evening, so we're going to launch into public comments. These are general public comments that deal with matters not on the agenda, and you can come up and address those now. The public may comment on any other matter listed on the agenda at the time the matter is being considered. There will be a time limit of no more than 3 minutes for each speaker. No action will be taken on matters brought up under this item, and all comments will be referred to staff. Would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, Kim Shirley, Exeter Place. I'm up here to give a big thank you to Ron Fucci, who delivered our wood chips to our butterfly garden. I encourage everyone to go visit our butterfly garden. It's in between the tennis courts and the Church of the Oaks. We were able to take a weed lot and cover it with wood chips. I want to thank the volunteers of SDRO, the Sustainable Delray Oaks, and we also have other volunteers who aren't even residents who are helping us out with that. And then we also had a lot of CHMB service learners who were there helping us with that as well. Mr. Maury's given us water and also 27 ceanothus plants that we planted this past weekend. So it looks beautiful. Thank you very much, the city. I hope everyone goes and visits it. We've got a lot more work to do, so if you're interested, let me know. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alice Green, and I live on Saucedo Avenue. The word community comes from the Latin word communis, which means common. The word politics comes from the Greek polites, meaning citizen, and that the root of that word is polis, which means city. The words city, citizen, and civil all share the same Indo-European root, which is K-E-I, which means to lie, bed, night's lodging, home, beloved, dear. I believe we can all agree that this next year is going to be politically intense. I hope that we, as citizens of our city, our beloved home, can remember to be civil to one another and to all guests that come in the best possible sense of the word civil. And that as members of a community that's both local and regional, remember that we're all in it together. We all live here, and we hence have much in common. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice.
Hi, I'm George Riley. I haven't been here in a long time, but I want to say that I'm a member of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. I was elected Division 2. Division 2 includes some of Seaside, all of Delray Oaks, all of Sand City, and some Monterey. So it's kind of a collection. I've been attending some of the Seaside City Council meetings periodically and giving a little update report on what the district is up to and what's going on. And I've been meaning to come to your council meeting in the past. I haven't done that yet. I was planning on coming in December, and lo and behold, it's a big meeting. I just thought, well, anyway, my point is, I speak in public comment so that I don't get involved in your city business. So that's why I chose to speak here. I think the recent tempest in a teapot about the report to the Coastal Commission, as well as their response to dealing, including it in their recommendations and so on, was a report that was issued by David Stolt by the Water District. And he did that in his own authority as general manager, responding to some issues that were in play. That was a draft document. It's now been finalized. It's been issued to all the parties that before complained about it. And even PUC and others were complaining about that document. But I want to say that that document has now been finalized under Dave Stolt's name and reissued to everybody because it was a draft before. And I just want to say that I think it was a tempest in a teapot. Now, second thing I want to say is, as representing Delray Oaks in some fashion, because you did give me 400 plus votes when I got elected just 2 years ago, but many of you got elected with 400 votes, so it's not like that's anything unique. But I want to say that what I stand for, and when I consistently apply these principles at the Water Management District, where I'm now working, and in my advocacy in general, I think there's a lower cost option available besides Cal-Am's desal. I think there's an environmentally superior alternative available to us through a project through the Marina, through the Monterey One Water District. I think it gets us quicker to the CDO, to resolve the CDO or get rid of the CDO, so that we don't have that moratorium on building permits around. And many of the people that are advocating for some of the larger project, which is desal, they don't mention the CDO anymore, because the assumption is, my assumption is, the litigation around desal is going to be so extensive and expensive that the delay is just going to go continuing on and on and on. And that's why I'm a big advocate for the alternative that I think is going to come forward shortly. So anyway, I'm just trying to get you up to date on where I stand, and in trying to represent your interests and the cost issue and environmental impact issues and the CDO issues. They're my 3 priorities, and I just want to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Hi, my name's John Tilley. Thanks for having us all here tonight. Tempest in a teapot, not quite so sure. I think that 3-page document, the thing that concerns me greatly in that 3-page document that was just referenced as an insignificant matter and tempest in a teapot was the idea that a staff member from the district would insert conclusions without demonstrating to all the people who would read that document that those were their own conclusions. Putting that conclusion in place along with cut and paste copies from a larger document. I would hope that the Water District would see that as a very concerning item and want to make sure that never happens again. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Hi, I'm Therese Vecchione. I live on Saucedo, and I would like to invite all of you to our first annual holiday art showcase and sale on Sunday from 12 to 5 at the Moose Lodge. And I would like to acknowledge our mayor, who is bringing together our city as no one ever has. I feel so much a part of this community in a way that connects me to my neighbors and makes me really appreciate where I live. So I'll leave these cards here, and please join us if you can on Sunday.
Thanks, Patrice.
Hi, I'm Katie Krieger, 3 Quenda, and I'm here to remind you and ask you to please consider that you are representing the voters, and to remind you that Mayor Kerr had a large mandate, and we want you to think about our views and reflect those in your policies, and please know that these are very important things to us all. Especially some of the things that you are considering tonight. So I'm just here to remind you that it's really good to listen to us and our viewpoints. Mayor Kerr won by a very substantial margin. I'm still uncomfortable with the ordinances that were passed, introduced the day after the election, and then passed thereafter. I feel that that was not a good thing for transparent government in particular. I think that if we needed some ordinances like that, they should have been in place 10 years before, whether or not they were de facto being implemented or that way. And so I just want you to know that there's a really strong contingency of people that are very concerned about the trajectory of our city, about the environment, and we're very mobilized. And we're asking you, please listen to us, and please have our views reflected in the actions that you take. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Rich Davison on Angeles Way. I don't know what orders she was talking about, and I don't know what concern she has. My concern is the creek. If it rains heavily, it's going to flood. Nothing gets done except for me and my neighbor who clean the creek out ourselves in front of our houses. Below us, it's a jungle. Doesn't seem to concern anybody. I realize there's only a few voters on Angeles Way, which is not a huge concern for you people. But we still need some help, and y'all don't come through. And how about that green belt up above the park? That's a fire hazard if I ever saw one. It's got to be cleaned out. Anybody agree here? Any agreement? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay, well, that's all I need to say then.
Thanks, Richard. Any other public comment? All right, public comment closed. We're going to move on to a presentation about the Fort Ord Recreation Trail and Greenway Environmental Review Update. I'd like to just acknowledge our Executive Director, TAMC Executive Director, Debbie Hale in the back. We have, I'm gonna mess this up, Head Engineer, Best Guy Engineer of TAMC, Rich Deal, with a new beard, he's here. And also Stefania Castillo, who's going to present the findings. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. As Mayor mentioned, I'm Stefania Castillo. I'm the Assistant Project Manager for the Fort Ord Regional Trail and Greenway Project. And today I'm going to give you all an update on the Environmental Impact Report, which we just released for public comment. So we'll be taking your comments here today, and you can also send us comments in writing, and I'll talk about all of that. But the presentation is mainly going to cover the main components of the report, which includes alternatives for where we would route the trail, and also some mitigation measures and the type of impacts that we found out through our analysis. So first off, the Fort Ord Regional Trail and Greenway Project is proposed as a 28-mile multi-use trail. So it would encircle roughly the city of Marina, city of Seaside. It comes through 218 here in Delray Oaks, also a little section of Monterey near Laguna Grande Regional Park, and it also has a loop around the Cal State Monterey Bay campus. And the project vision is to really create a network where people can walk and bike, and it's really an alternative to using your car if you want to get from home to work, or if you want to get from a regional park to another regional park. This would be a safe and accessible way to get there without having to rely on your car. And accessibility is a really important part of this project. We want to make sure that the gradings work for folks that are in wheelchairs, but also our children who are just learning how to ride bikes, and make this really safe. Again, we also want to make sure that we connect up open space, as you can see from the map. We're going to be going through the former Fort Ord area, which most of it right now is just open space. And we also want this trail to work as a habitat corridor. I'll be talking about some concepts for an undercrossing at General Jim Boulevard that would provide a corridor for amphibians to the other side of Frog Pond. And this trail is really meant to be complementary to the built environment, so we want to make sure that we reduce impacts to our habitat. So I'll be talking about that a little bit more. The trail width is usually proposed to be from 8 to 12 feet wide, paved, but in some areas, again, we want to be complementary to the environment, that would be reduced. And we would use a stable permeable surface. So in areas such as the Frog Pond, we want to make sure that we are mindful of the area surrounding the trail. And then from there, we would have 2 shoulders on either side that would be 2 feet wide, and that would be a softer surface for joggers. And then within that, we would have a greenway of up to 150 feet. And that, again, is depending in each area where that would be feasible. So now I'm going to go over the draft environmental impact report, some of the main components, which are the impacts and mitigation. So from our analysis, a lot of the impacts from this project would be to biological resources. So we have some mitigations identified in our report to make sure that we do habitat mitigation and monitoring. We also want to avoid biological resources or mitigate our impact. We also want to use construction best management practices to make sure that we reduce noise and reduce impact to habitat. We're also looking at mitigation measures that would help us with invasive weed management, wetland restoration, which would be important here in Delray Oaks, and also making sure that we're monitoring our Native American resources in the area. So I'm going to shift now and talk about the trail through the Delray Oaks. And so the proposed trail roughly goes from the intersection of Highway 218 at Fremont Boulevard up to the Frog Pond and Carlton Drive here in the city. And we have had a couple meetings here at City Hall and also at Delray Park, and we have heard some resident concerns regarding the project. And these are listed here. Some are regarding increased bicycle traffic in the wetland preserved, impacts to wildlife and biological resources in the preserved, homeless intrusion, and also safety and aesthetic impacts at the proposed undercrossing at 218. So we've taken these comments and incorporated these into the project alternatives that are part of the report. One of the alternatives would be to not build the trail. Another one we identified would be to increase the use of existing roadways to minimize biological impact. And also another alternative would be to substitute overcrossings or tunnels and bridges for at-grade crossings to minimize aesthetic impacts. And we've also identified an alignment that would go on the northern part of the Frog Pond Wetland Preserved, so that would lower the impact to the wetland and also create a better separation from the existing walking path. So this, an alternative, the existing roadway alternative to the undercrossing at 218, or having actually the trail route through the parks, Work Memorial Park and Delray Park, would be to just route the trail through the existing roadway, which is Highway 218. There's a couple challenges with having our trail going through the highway. It is a constrained roadway width, so there's not a lot of room to work with. And so we would only be able to put in bicycle lanes, so it would only be for bicycle travel, wouldn't really be a way for people to walk from one end to the other. There would also be safety risk associated with high speed and high volume on the traffic. And this, again, the trail, the vision is to make this accessible for all. So this wouldn't really be a route for children or for folks in wheelchairs. But that is one alternative that we can look at and that the report looks at. Another alternative to the proposed routing through Angeles Way would be to instead route the trail through Plumas Avenue, and there is currently a PG&E easement, but it will require to recapture the right-of-way of a couple backyards, and I have another slide where I'll show where that is. And there is sort of a tunnel effect behind Plumas Avenue due to the homes. There's fences on either side, so I'll show you a picture of that. And if we go this way, there's sort of a missed opportunity to connect parks, but this is an alternative that is included in the report. And you can see here in the red line, which shows what the route would look like instead of going through Angeles Way. So this is an aerial view of the easement. And so right now the line to your left of the screen is the proposed route through the park. And this yellow line shows the alternative to that, which would be on the PG&E easement. Now again, I talked a little bit about it, backyard being on the right-of-way of the easement, so the trail would go through there like the yellow line shows, but we do have a backyard here where is being used in the easement currently. With regards to the frog pond, this is another alternative that we have identified in our report. So the proposed alignment is shown in green, which would be on the southern end of the park. And so the northern alternative would sort of create a separated trail sort of above the current walking trail, so the modes would be separated, and it would also be further away from the wetland, so it would avoid impacts to the wetland as opposed to the southern alignment. The northern alternative also has opportunities for removal of invasive plants and also habitat restoration. And again, there's better separation of users, so bicyclists would be on a separate trail and walkers would stay on the existing trail. Another alternative that the report looks at is having a not-grade crossing at Carlton Drive and 218 instead of having a tunnel. So this alternative will eliminate the tunnel, but it would require us to put in a crosswalk warning system. So those would be the flashing lights that I'm sure a lot of people have seen them at the Monterey Sports Complex. And that's because a traffic signal would not be warranted on the highway per the standards of Caltrans. So again, these are the main components of the draft environmental impact report. It is open for public review period. It started November 7 and it will run through January 3rd of next year. There is a copy electronically on our website. There's also hard copies for viewing available at the TAMC offices and at the Marina and Seaside Public Libraries. So besides your comments here today, we would love you to send us letters, emails until January 3rd, and all of this information is on our website. The PowerPoint will be posted on our website. And there's also a couple public meetings besides this one. We will have 2 meetings on December 12th, one in Seaside and one in Marina, and those dates are available on our website. And so just to finish a little bit with where are we going from here, once we collect all comments at the beginning of January, TAMC will work with our consultants to incorporate those comments into the final document. And then that document would be brought to our TAMC Board of Directors for approval at the end of March. And from there, that document will also go to all the city councils that are part of this project. And from there, we would move on to design. And with that, I'm going to open it up to questions and public comment.
Great, thank you, Stefania. Can we get a copy of this to put on our website as well, so we have the dates
Definitely.
easily available for everyone? Okay, thank
Yes.
you. What I'd like to do is open up for council. Any comments or questions?
I have one.
Yes.
Yeah. On the, on those backyards, are those, is this working? Yep. Are they, is that private land, or has private land, or not private land, but have they just kind of moved into the easement? Is that,
Well,
do we know?
I don't think we
Actually,
really-
know those neighbors. I know them pretty
Yeah,
well.
I don't think we really know for sure,
how much?
right, and we don't know if it's an encroachment into the easement or if the easement has granted use of that space.
Yeah, okay.
But there's a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right-of-way process associated with it to take it back.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
As far as the going through Angeles, have you thought about leaving the bikes on 218 and making a walking path through Angeles? Has that been discussed?
So the current alternative would be that the trail going on 218 would only be for bicycle travel, wouldn't be wide enough for walking. So people would have to take an alternate route if they're walking, so they could go through Angeles.
Okay. And then I heard or saw it in the paper, the 3,000 people you expect on this trail. I know that's a little overinflated, correct? Do you have any idea what you really think? Obviously, we've seen the bike path in Monterey on Fremont. I think I've seen 2 people on that path. It's very, it's a strange path, and 2, people aren't using it, and, it's not a good use.
So for addressing the 3,000 daily users, that's a conservative number because that's what we're required to look at in our reports. So not only it would be from like operation 20 years from now or something like that. So that's a really higher end number.
What's realistic?
Well, the loops were designed to kind of accommodate where the people are. So really, a large number of trips are going to be in that CSUMB loop, because the students will go from campus to the recreation trail. Folks in those areas that live in those homes will use those trails to go back and forth to parks and things. On the more wide open portions, there's going to be a lot more sparse users, because it's more folks who are used to riding longer distances, because it is 28 miles total in length. So, that does cut out a lot of the more recreational users. But where you have folks that are walking on the paths through Delray Oaks that connect through Delray Park, those people are going to use this trail too. So it's going to be, there's kind of some double counting a little bit.
Okay.
The popular routes will have more people. The less popular will have fewer people. We'll see kind of what it sifts out at as we get going, but generally it's not going to be anywhere near what the recreation trail on the coast does, because it's kind of a bike highway for commuting and other things. So some of the segments of the trail will have more of a local feel, where it's mostly local folks using it. Other sections will be, they can use them for race events up at CSUMB or whatever. So we don't have a projection study that goes segment by segment saying, yeah, we're going to have 3,000 a year, 1,000 a year.
Got it.
I'm guessing that it will be a small number as we start out, and until we get the trail really completed all the way, it's not going to have a huge ridership, but it will provide really nice connected access for local folks in the city when we build this first piece. And more specifically, this trail will allow you to ride your bike or walk down to the beach or the recreation trail. So I'm thinking that we're going to have more folks in Seaside and Delray Oaks who want to use this first segment.
Got it. So it sounds like we're going to have less people probably on our portion, and that the one trail that goes from the Monterey line all the way to Marina, that's what you consider the highway.
Yeah, the bike freeway.
I mean, that would be probably, a commuter's type of, highway versus a side street, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The area along Angeles Way, if that be the route that you decide on, will the road be used as the bike trail, or, thank you, or will it be a separate, at the side of the roadway, or will the roadway itself be the trail?
So the current proposal is to not stripe anything on Angeles, not change it at all, and allow bikes to ride down Angeles just like they would in a normal fashion. According to vehicle code, you ride on the right down the street with traffic, stop at the stop signs, be safe. Same thing with walkers, walk or jog on the side of the road, whichever side you're comfortable with, obey traffic laws. And so it would basically be the same street it is now, with no changes, but it'll be signed so that people will know how to get to each section of the trail.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation.
No. So coming back to the PG&E easement, can you tell me about how many houses we're looking at? It didn't look like too many. 2 or 3?
Yeah, I would say 2 or 3.
Okay. And the flashing lights. So by the gym downtown, they're on the ground, but I've also seen them up above.
Yeah. So some sort of, there's very different styles of crosswalk warning systems. There's overhead ones, there's ones on the sides. And so we'll work out the exact orientation of all that stuff during design. And it is on a Caltrans roadway, so they do have ultimate approval and they have design authority. So we'll be following Caltrans standards in whenever that piece comes out.
Okay. Any other council comments, questions? All right, let's open it up to the public. Sorry, we're a little crowded there, so if people could come up.
Good evening, Paul Bruno, resident of unincorporated Monterey County. I just want to talk a little bit about the process. I appreciate what they've done. We're a property owner along Fort Ord area, private property, and they've come to us and met with us several times discussing alignment and things like that. I think that the fact that they've engaged property owners in the design and thought process, I do appreciate that. And I think that, what they're attempting to do is a good idea. It's difficult, especially when you're dealing with a lot of private property, but overall they're doing their best to incorporate our ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Now's the time.
Hi, Scott Morgan, 942 Angeles Way. I'm just curious, if it does go through Angeles Way, what are the hours of operation? Does anybody have that for me? Because right now the park is closed from dusk till dawn, and I would hope that we don't leave the park open during nighttime. So that's a concern of mine. And I've noticed that the access gates have been left open for the past few months now, and I don't know why. So, thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Please.
I have some questions. Again,
Can you please tell us who you are?
Oh, sorry, I'm Kathy Palazzolo. I think, the spirit of this is a good thing. I think, however, it's sad to me that there'll probably be a negative impact on the people of Delray Oaks. I do think there's going to be an issue with the homeless. We've discussed this before. I've met with various people in the city about it, and they assure me that they'll take care of it. But I don't know how Delray Oaks thinks that they can handle that problem when no other cities have been able to. Delray Oaks doesn't have the manpower, nor do they have the resources or the finances to deal with some of the issues that can come along with the homeless population that may come in. Just the upswing of arrests are going to take our law enforcement off our streets while they drive to Salinas to drop these people off. And, the garbage, all the issues that come with it, the drug usage, the drug paraphernalia, is just not good for Delray Oaks. It's not good for our kids that want to use that park. It's not good for the residents that already want to walk through the city. it's going to limit us and it's going to harm us. I'm curious what the lighting issues are going to be for this trail. I know there's some sort of lighting plan, I just don't know really what it is throughout this trail. I don't personally want, a lot of bright lights through Delray Oaks. That's one of the nice things about Delray Oaks. It's dark at night, you hear the frogs, it shuts down at night, and that's what we like. But if we're going to allow people to be roaming our streets with lights, it just brings about a lot of other issues. It makes us more vulnerable to burglaries. We're bringing an outside population into our city. We're opening up avenues to leave if you have committed crimes. One of the things that makes Delray Oaks safer, and I've worked in law enforcement for 32 years, so I have a little bit of expertise in this, but one of the things that makes Delray Oaks safer is that we don't have a lot of in and out travel. You've got one way in, one way out. That's one of the things that keeps crime down. We will be changing that, and we're going to be giving strangers an excuse to be in our city. I think it's going to be to the detriment of our residents. Also, I'd like to know what the liability is going to be for the city. Who's going to maintain these paths, and if somebody gets injured on the path, what is going to be the liability to this city? What's going to happen if there's a serious injury? One of the things I deal with at work are the claims against the county, the sheriff's department, and they're very expensive to battle and deal with, whether they are legitimate or not. Has the city thought about how this is going to impact? What will our liability be for this trail? I just think there needs to be a better way to do this. Rosita's a very steep grade. I find it hard to believe that a lot of people are even going to be able to ride their bikes up Rosita. I think half of them will be getting off their bike and walking up Rosita. If there's a trail for bikes on Angeles, the residents, not on Angeles, on Canyon Del Rey, the residents know how to walk from one end of the city to the other. They could get around that. The pedestrian/bike trails in the city of Monterey have caused problems. There's been accidents with bicycle versus pedestrians. It's not always a good idea to have a dual path. Have they surveyed all these areas yet to see really what's going to happen? I just think we've had issue with runoff already. We've already had flooding issues. If we start making these trails, it's going to be more of a runoff. I just don't think it's good for the city. The biggest issue I have is the homeless population and what it's going to bring to our city. You guys can say that we won't let it happen. When there was going to be a meeting at the old city.
So we're beyond 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, curious what you guys are going to do about the homeless population.
Thank you. Any other public comment on the FORTAG presentation?
Hi, Susan Ragsdale Cronin on Carlton Drive. And as a transportation cyclist, I'm so excited because I wouldn't ride on 218 or take my kids on 218 if you paid me $1 million. It's very unsafe, and crossing the street is very unsafe. I see cars passing on the right in the bike lane when I'm in my car, and it's very scary because they can't see if there's a bike up ahead. So anything to make my life safer, I'm all for, and I'm here to tell Rich Deal I love the bike lane on Fremont. I've used it several times, and those little green bicycle lights, and it feels like I'm on a roller coaster. I love it. Every minute of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Hi, Kevin Dayton, out of towner from City of Monterey, where I use the bike path almost every day there to walk my dog. And you have to watch yourself, but it isn't quite as bad as some people would think it is. But I was thinking about this because in 2016, Measure X came up, And you know that 4 previous times there have been a sales tax to try to do transportation improvements. And each time there was some faction in Monterey County who had to oppose it so that it failed. And finally, Transportation Agency for Monterey County, Debbie Hale and the people there managed to get together a big enough coalition to get it passed. They had everybody from people like me, who fiscal conservatives, to the environmentalists. And one of the things that brought the environmentalists on board when they had opposed the previous effort was this 4-tag bike trail. And I can tell you the taxpayers associations, their boards, talked about this quite a bit, saying $40 million for a bike trail? This is ridiculous. Should we support this or not? In the end, the Salinas Taxpayers Group decided to support it. The Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Group was neutral on it, and they managed to get enough to pass it. And then I looked and I saw the comments on the notice of preparation under CEQA, and I said, this thing's going to be stopped with CEQA lawsuits, just like everything else in this region. And I think as you go about this, think about how the people came together to support this Measure X. And even if you didn't support it at the time, you know what? It's sort of a shame to have something that people pass expecting something, and this 4-tag was a key part of that. And then all of a sudden, you get rid of it because some people use the California Environmental Act to block it for many years. So, I think you have to be careful, listen to the neighbors, but keep in mind here what the bigger context is of the whole thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Hi, I'm Patrice, I'm back. I used to ride a bike, now I'm a walker. Dual use paths are a really lousy idea. At Fort Ord, I've almost gotten killed more than once as a walker. So I think it's very important that walkers have one place and bike riders have another. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment on the 4-tag trail?
Hi, forgive me, but I don't live in Delray Oaks. My name's Susan Schiavone. I'm from Seaside. But I do want to make the point that during all of FORA, they ignored the habitat management. They ignored the wildlife corridor aspect, and it's been put down to a lower priority. So I think one of the opportunities this presents is an opportunity to have somewhere for animals to move around as we build this area up. And so it's really important whether or not you decide how you do it in Delray Oaks. That's up to Delray Oaks, but I just want to make that point. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Any other public comments?
Good evening. I'm Joanne Davison. I live on Angeles Way, and I'm very concerned about this walking path coming down Angeles Way. I'm a walker. I walk all over the neighborhood. I walk all over Monterey. I was just down at El Estero Lake, and I was down there by the Chamber of Commerce, I guess, and there was a homeless camp there. And as I walked by, I heard a lot of comments. I heard a lot of swear words. And it was not pleasant. And I was born and raised in that area, so that's home to me. And when I saw that, it really upset me. I no longer will walk down by El Estero Lake anymore. And I'm very fearful that that's will happen to Delray Oaks Park. We've seen many types of people come in and use it. I see walkers, I see people with dogs. I live right there. They walk right in front of my house. I have a little bridge that the kids are all really curious to see. You have strange kids come down on bicycles or skateboards. Everybody wants to come on the bridge. Where's my privacy? You know, it's wonderful, it's great, it's a great idea. I do not see many people walking around here. I don't know if it will bring more people. I don't see a lot of bike riders. The people who use the park are usually people who don't even live in Delray Oaks. That concerns me. It's looking very nice. I guess I'm a little bit selfish because this is a nice place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Last call for public comment on 4-tag. All right, we'll close public comment. I just wanted to make one comment in regards to a couple of the statements that were made. I hope if you see access gates open and you see creeks that need to be cleaned, that you call City Hall and you let them know.
We do.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for calling and emailing. The issue on the gates was a simple operational matter that we had just gotten away from in terms of identifying for shift change what needed to be closed and when it needed to be open, and that should be fixed. Please let us know if it's not. As it relates to creek cleaning, we are doing the best we can with limited resources. We feel, and we're going to find out here tonight, we feel that we're ready for first flush and the rains, and we'll stay at it.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on. Thank you, Tamsi, for coming and sharing. We're going to move on to staff reports. I'll turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's been a busy month. I'm going to move through this as quickly as I can. We continue to make progress on our effort to adopt and file an updated housing element with the state by the end of the calendar year. Staff received a letter from the Department of Housing and Community Development in Sacramento stating that our housing element was accepted. The 30-day period for public comment on the housing element's environmental review closed on Friday, November 22nd. Staff had received written comment from Landwatch, the Airport Land Use Commission, Monterey Peninsula Partners, and the state. A special meeting of the Planning Commission was held last night. It was a terrific discussion with our planning commissioners. Planning Commission voted to recommend to the City Council that it adopt the housing element and accept the environmental finding under CEQA of a negative declaration based on an initial study. Staff will present the housing element to the Airport Land Use Commission on December 16th at their meeting for a consistency determination, and Council has scheduled a special meeting on December 16th to consider its adoption. Should Council approve, staff will file the adopted housing element with the state for the end of the calendar year, which will make us eligible for significant grant funding for planning and begin to get us. It'll be the first housing element we've done in about 25 years, so it'll begin to get us caught up on being compliant with the state law. Staff visited Sparks Distribution and Seaweed Manufacturing, two of our cannabis businesses that are nearly prepared to open. They will both be opening. They're making good progress and will be opening in the months ahead. A file claimed by Sergeant Ingersoll, former police officer with the Police Department of Delray Oaks, was dismissed in federal court. Karen and Sergeant Guzman accompanied a cannabis compliance inspector all day Thursday as all of our cannabis businesses underwent a significant external compliance inspection. This was the first time we had done it, and we frankly weren't exactly sure how that was going to go. And we were very, very encouraged to receive the initial report from the compliance inspector at the day's end that there were no fatal flaws, no red lines, no violations of state law or regulation that would cause us to close any of our cannabis businesses. There was a significant list of areas we can adopt best practices and improve, which is terrific, and we welcome all of that. So that was a great day out looking into the compliance of our cannabis sector. The 4 Admin Committee met to discuss the Habitat Conservation Plan Draft Environmental Impact Study, or EIS, HCP EIS, and the formation of a HCP Joint Powers Authority that would potentially govern the HCP after the sunset of FORA on June 30th, 2020. The HCP's EIS was published on the Federal Register about 10 days ago for its 45-day review. We've posted these on our website as well as in our kiosks and encourage residents to take a look at that environmental document. It's out for public comment. FORA held an all-permittee meeting that we noticed as a city council meeting. We had 3 city council members attend that meeting last week. It was a good 3-hour start at understanding what the HCP is, what it isn't, what a JPA might look like, and how it would be funded with endowment funds. This is a significant component as FORA approaches sunset as to how Habitat will be managed on the broader Fort Ord. We will be bringing the matter to City Council in January for an information briefing on both the HCP, the Habitat Conservation Plan, which is under development and will hopefully become what is adopted in the future, and the current Habitat Management Plan, which is what is governing habitat management on FORA. Pros and cons of each, and a discussion in January. And then in February, we'll be back to council with a draft JPA agreement for review, discussion, and potential consideration for adoption. I met with representatives of the California Native Plant Society about the habitat area adjacent to South Boundary Road and General Jim Moore. I was informed by their board, which meets quarterly, that it is not interested in city staff presenting to it at their December meeting. That's unfortunate. We are hoping to meet on site with Aaron Harwain and representatives of CNPS sometime in December, so that we can continue to understand what it is exactly at a fairly granular level the habitat concerns are, how the roadway development project for South Boundary Road and its realignment may or may not impinge on the habitat there, and how we can chart a way forward. I met with Mr. Maury to discuss the specifics of requirements for his CUP conditional use permit application, and he filed it today with the city. So we'll be planning that with the Planning Commission meeting once the environmental review is complete. Staff worked with Denise Duffy and Associates to file the city's Senate Bill 2 grant application. That grant application is for $160,000 of planning funds that cities around California are eligible to apply for if your housing element is current. We've made the case to the state that our housing element is significantly underway to being adopted, and so we applied for the grant, and we're hopeful that we'll get it. Planning Commission, as I said, this is a great news story. Our Planning Commission met and approved a project, and that project was appealed by a resident. And the City Council was going to hear that appeal tonight, but in a great sort of effort at working through the problems themselves, the person that appealed applied for his own permit to remedy the concerns about viewshed. The Planning Commission considered that application. It was approved, and it's a wonderful problem solved by residents and our planning commissioners. I attended a United Way lunch discussion about accessory dwelling units. United Way is getting involved in trying to help address the housing crisis. They've chosen the ADU piece of housing to focus their time and energy on, and they brought city managers and staff together. It was a great discussion about some best practices. Seaside's got some great things going on that I'm happy to look at and plagiarize and bring to our city as appropriate. The Citizens Action Group volunteers and some church volunteers spent a Saturday morning spreading mulch along our creek to help with erosion control and weed abatement, and I appreciate that. As Kim mentioned earlier, Sustainable Delray Oaks and a group of volunteers from CSUMB beautified the area next to our tennis courts, working closely with our public works staff, and that was a terrific start on what's going to be a great project, so thank you. Staff posted notices for several draft EIRs, environmental impact studies. The Habitat Conservation Plan, as well as FORTAG, which was presented to you tonight. Please look at our website. Please check the kiosks. These EIRs are important documents. They're your opportunity to understand what the environmental impacts are, to make your comments and have those made part of the record. Staff met with Seaside County Sanitation District regarding the design of our sewer line under South Boundary Road. We expect that design cost to be approximately $50,000 if done concurrently with the road design, which is underway. We expect the design cost to be much, much higher if done separately at a future time. So we're trying hard to work with Seaside to reach an agreement on the funding and the scope of work for a contract to design the sewer line concurrently with the roadway. Staff met with David Stolt regarding water demand with a couple of city managers from the region and suggested the water demands that were suggested in the district's reports, and staff has suggested to the district that it be peer reviewed so that it can be more rigorously defended. Staff met with the city engineer to discuss the scope of work for the spring 2020 street slurry project. This will be our third project in a row, Measure X funded. Thank you, Tamsi. The project will include our remaining residential streets of Portola, Canyon, Work, Los Encinos, Rosita, and the cul-de-sacs along Angeles Way. The Florida Wastewater Committee met to discuss Marina Coast Water District's master plan and fee schedule. This is important for our future because the fee schedule and master plan under consideration practically doubles the cost of development fees for Marina Coast Water District on the former Fort Ord property. Staff received a revised agreement from Marina Coast Water District on provision of water service. That agreement needs to be in place before Forest sunsets June 30th, 2020 to allow for continuation of water service provision by Marina Coast on our former Fort Ord property. The city was identified in the news report as fiscally challenged by the state auditor. We did not get a call, we didn't get a letter, we just read about it in the news like everybody else. We reached out to the state auditor's office and looked into the data, and it was based on 2016 audited financials. And turns out in 2016 we were in terrible shape. We have shared with them our 2017, our 2018, and our 2019, which was just finished. We'll brief it tonight, it's on the agenda. Certified financial audits. The trend line is unmistakable. The city is headed in the right direction. We still have significant concerns that the council is working through. What we hope to avoid is a state-level audit, which apparently comes with being identified as this high-risk pool of cities. That would be pretty onerous on our small staff and pretty invasive. And finally, City Hall has a fresh coat of paint, repaired walls where the car crash occurred, right by my office. And new signage on the front. If you haven't seen it during the day, it looks pretty sharp. Kudos to Chief, Ron, and Kim for their collaboration on colors and design. I think everybody that looks at it will agree that it's a terrific improvement, a nice facelift for our aging building. Public Works coordinated the planting of new plants around City Hall with the Citizens Action Group. Ron will remove the old plants, purchase the new plants, and Denise and volunteers will help plant the new plants and our planters around. Ron also in place foul ball poles at the ball field. If you haven't seen the park lately, our baseball field continues to look terrific. The grass is growing in on the outfield. We've got clay on the pitcher's mound, correct height. We've got the bases in place. The foul ball poles just went in. There's padding on the fence line in case a young kid runs from foul ball. And we're hoping to see families and teams playing there here in the spring. Ron is a one-man show, and he continues to do everything he can to keep our storm basins clear and our creek clear in preparation for the rainy season, while at the same time continuing to work on fire abatement as the fire seasons become more dangerous and longer. So there was work done on General Jim Moore to cut back some of the trees to allow the full width of General Jim Moore to serve as a fire break, rather than having the trees grow 20 feet over and shorten that fire break for us. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to council reports. Mr. Gagliardi.
Most of the boards are starting to wind down for the year. With FORA, it was mostly just update on the transition plans. Most of the critical action items are being handled by the admin committee, and Dino's bird dogging those. On Monterey 1, we had one action last night. We approved a $15 million line of credit, and that was really kind of that's the last meeting for the year. On the Water Master, the board meets actually next week, but there are two reports that I think anyone who's interested in kind of peninsula water landscape should pick up. These are on the website, the Water Master, Seaside Water Master. This one is the updated 2018 Basin Water Management Plan. It was released in July. This is the first one was done in 10 years, or 10 years ago. And so this is updated with 10 years of data. This is where the 43,800 acre foot of overdraft is noted. And that's actually it's a water report, but it's fascinating. It gives a lot of history. It's also the reason that I think that anyone who's got any interest in water, or peninsula water kind of landscape, the basin is the center. The basin is where it's all. I mean, all of our water projects go into the basin, and if the basin is damaged, we're all done. So, so this is a great report right here to kind of give you an idea of where the issues are and what the Basin Master's ideas are on how to manage the basin, the action plan. And then this one just came out 2 days ago, and this is the saltwater intrusion analysis report. And this is the one that I think everyone should be reading. The executive summary starts off with, "We are not intruded," which that's the good news. But we are 31 feet under sea level, our groundwater levels, and that's something that has only happened since 1995. And so we have all the precursors of potential saltwater intrusion. We actually have one of our deep wells is beginning to show all the precursors of the beginnings of intrusion. We're monitoring that, but right now we are not intruded. But if we continue to go as is, or as business as usual, it won't be a matter of if, it'll be a matter of when. So both of these are on the website, the Seaside Water Basin Master, and they, like I said, they're well written, and they're pretty fascinating to read. That's actually it. That's it, the three things.
Okay, thank you. Elise? Good evening. As Dino said, it's been a busy month. I attended the United Veterans Council meeting at Fort Ord. It's held the last Wednesday of every month, and it's a collaboration of various military and veterans groups who come together, exchange ideas, and support each other. And it is actually a function of part of the county's Military and Veterans Service Office. I also attended the Fort Ord Area Retiree Council meeting, which was held at Wackerling Hall on Palm this month, because prior to that I attended the Presidio of Monterey DLI Veterans Day ceremony held at the Berlin Wall. There are sections, almost, I can't say full-size sections, but 8-foot-high sections of the Berlin Wall at Presidio of Monterey near Building 616. If you can get up there, please go look at it. I also attended the Veterans Day ceremony at the California Central Coast Veterans Cemetery. It was a very moving ceremony. I attended the AMBAG meeting. Not that much goes on at AMBAG, to be quite honest. They did complete their audit, and there were no significant findings, issues, or weaknesses. They did hold elections, and the new president of the AMBAG is Steve McShane from Salinas. I've talked before about this local government planning group that they're getting together that actually covers all of the Central Coast all the way down to Santa Barbara. And our group covers not just AMBAG counties and the cities they're in, which is Santa Cruz, San Benito, and Monterey, but also will include San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara counties. And the working group from the AMBAG cluster will be Supervisor Phillips, Mayor Gunther, and I can't remember his name, but he's the mayor of King City.
LeBaire.
I'm sorry?
LeBaire.
LeBaire?
Mike LeBaire.
Okay, thank you. They also gave a very interesting presentation on what was called the Central Coast Highway 1 Climate Resiliency Study, which is actually was a study that was done from Highway 1, basically from Castroville up to Watsonville, and how to mitigate rising sea waters and the options, and I think it's a great way of doing it, is they're looking at mitigating and what the various options are before they get to environmental impact and design plans. So they're kind of doing it ahead of time and looking at their options, because as is, there are high tide times, especially king tide, where Highway 1 can be flooded. And also, unbeknownst to most of us, there's a railroad line that goes through Elkhorn Slough to Watsonville, which is being considered, if they want to run a commuter line to Salinas, it would go that railroad line. Well, that railroad line would also need to be raised in some feasible way. So it was a very interesting study, very fascinating for me just to see how extensive Elkhorn Slough and the other sloughs are that are in that area. I also attended one regular meeting and one special meeting of the Northern Salinas Valley Mosquito Abatement District. All of their employees are now qualified to spread pesticides using their drones, so they have gone through their drone training and their pesticide spreading training and have gotten, everybody's passed their tests, and as the weather and the seasons permit, they will be able to apply pesticides via drones, which will be significantly time savings, money savings, because currently they have been using helicopters, and also will be much more accurate. They can get into lower areas and closer into trees, under trees, and not as spread the pesticides as wide of an area. They reported that in 2018, in the state of California, there were 180 West Nile cases in people and 1 West Nile death. There were also 4 encephalitis cases. So keeping the mosquitoes controlled is very vital. It's vital for everybody's health. And finally, we met and gave authority to the manager to sign purchase agreements for property off of Blanco Road for a new headquarters. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lintel?
Thank you. I attended the DLI Veterans Memorial Service, as Louise just spoke of. I also attended the Fora HCP, which Dino covered for me, so that made it easy. The Community Human Services meeting was quite interesting. There was a presentation about the DAISY program. The DAISY program is to help the students between the ages of 8 and 11 to overcome drugs or alcohol addiction. They've also incorporated into their program just recently crime prevention, how to educate the children to try to keep them off the streets and in the gangs, to keep them from the gangs. And so that was very interesting. There was a report on the 50-year gala for CHS, which was held at the Marriott Hotel, top floor, beautiful. I love it up there. The view is just absolutely gorgeous. And they reported a profit of approximately $14,000, and that was on the silent as well as the live auctions. And the CAG meeting was a lot of focus on the Santa's Workshop, which is coming up the first week of December. And each one of you at your home received a copy of the flyer. And I hope that we see you all there. And Santa arrives about 2:30, thanks to the chief. He'll be brought in with sirens on, and the kids all run down to greet him. It's really a fun event. And that is my report.
Thank you. Ms. Clark?
Yes, I apologize, I left my notes at home, but I did attend MST. We had a ribbon cutting in Salinas for the new Salinas Transit Center, and it has the the Portland Loo is the big item in Salinas, and it's a giant bathroom, and it's very easy to clean. So it's been a must-need for folks there because they were using all the restrooms of the neighborhood, the neighboring businesses. So it's new state-of-the-art, and it cost a lot of money. It was like crazy. I think it was like $80,000. I don't know. But it's a clean bathroom for everybody, which is necessary. And I sat in for John halfway through a FORA meeting, and it talked about the HCP, the whole process, and so it was very educational, and so that was good. I was very happy to be there. I do want to just say a comment about not only Ron Fucci, but our staff in general. Everybody's just so hardworking, and even Ron, when he's driving by, he's like, he's happy, he's a hard worker, and there's an energy amongst our whole staff, between the officers, the staff down here at City Hall. And I encourage everybody that if you have a problem, like I hear problems today, feel free to call. This is like, we're small, it's open, you can walk in and talk to anybody, and people want to help. And I think it's just important to understand too that we do have limited resources, but we are doing better than we ever have. Over the past 3-4 years. It's just getting better here. The staff is qualified, and I'm proud to be a citizen here in Delray Oaks. And happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Thanks, that's nice. So I'll try and cruise through these as quickly as I can. October 23rd, I attended the TAMC board meeting. We received an update on the Highway 68 corridor improvement projects, including safety and traffic flow improvements on each of the 9 signalized intersections between Jocelyn Canyon and San Venancio. Plans also include wildlife crossings on some sections to reduce crashes that are happening with wildlife as they're trying to get across the road. $50 million comes from Measure X. We're talking a lot about Measure X tonight, with matching state and federal funds being sought to cover the remaining costs. We also had a fun interactive poll to identify transportation needs to help develop the 2022 Regional Transportation Plan, where they're looking obviously many years forward to the county's transportation system. They're anticipating a public review in December 2021, so we're looking out far in advance. On the 25th, I attended an all-day Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, the 5th annual State of the Region. The highlight for me was Comptroller Betty Yee, who was the keynote speaker. She's anticipating unemployment rise due in part to the slowing of national growth. The state is positioned to weather the downturn with robust reserves. She, as well as other panels, discussed the state's affordability crisis, which will continue to be an issue as long as workers cannot find affordable housing close to well-paying jobs. Admiral Rondeau, the president of MPS, even mentioned the civilian staff and how far they have to drive in to work at MPS. Other subjects included opportunity zones, forest resiliency, climate action planning, and internships. On the 26th, I attended the Mayor's Advisory Committee for Arts and Culture, which happens each fourth Saturday at 10 a.m. at the Moose Lodge, doing a lot of planning for the upcoming art showcase. It's the first one. If you're available on Sunday and want to weather the weather, please come. On the 28th, I attended the regular monthly Monterey One Water meeting. There's a lot of critical water decisions being made right now, and I want to ensure that I am there in person so I can hear and see what's happening. November 1st, I attended the regular mayor's meeting in Marina. The city selection committee voted for 2 city representatives, one smaller and one larger city rep, to the Central Coast Housing Working Group. King City Mayor and the Salinas Mayor got appointed. Later that day, I met with Monterey County Arts Council. They have moved from Carmel in the Sunset Center to right underneath the Coast Weekly, and wanted to start meeting their neighbors. So they're helping us promote the art showcase on Sunday and have offered to come and do a presentation for the council on other ways they may be able to help. They're a wonderful addition to the neighborhood. On November 6th, we had a special council meeting to vote on establishing emergency status for the extension of the add-on sales tax that will be put on the March ballot. On the 11th, I also attended a beautiful Veterans Day commemorative event at the California Central Coast Veterans Cemetery. Thanks to all of you out there for who have served our country. On the 12th, I met with staff and Rafael Payan, who is the executive director of the Monterey Regional Parks District, to discuss the Frog Pond, status of the Frog Pond, both sections, FORTAG, and a possible project that would connect local parks. On the 12th, I went to the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District Feasibility Study results meeting at the Embassy Suites. The results after the 9-month study indicated it is feasible to purchase CalAm. Of course, there are a lot of nuances involved with attempting to purchase a large company that has stated it is not for sale. Wednesday the 14th, I wanted to see the California Coastal Commission meeting, but I have a day job, so I went to Marina, which was very handy for a lot of people to be able to participate that couldn't take the day off and go to Half Moon Bay. I stayed for several hours and then had to go. That evening, I attended the Sustainable Delray Oaks regular meeting where they were planning for the butterfly garden. On the 15th, I attended the Finance Committee meeting, which is with Councilwoman Getzel, Dennis Allion, and Dino, as well as Roberto, who is our financial consultant. Thank you. More than a helper. And you will hear some very good news about year-end balance and suggestions for disbursement of that a little bit later tonight. On the 16th, I took my shovels and pitchforks and I went down to help with the butterfly garden. There were lots of residents, stakeholders, and enthusiastic CSUMB students. It looks 100% better. Thank you. That evening, I attended a reception with the Secretary of the Navy, Richard Spencer, at the Naval Postgraduate School. There was a day of activities pairing MPS and Monterey Institute International Studies on global security. Unfortunately, since that event, he has resigned his position. If you may have seen it in the paper, that was him. It's confusing due to some pardoned military officers. So that is unfortunate. He was a great leader and he will be missed. Then I and Dino went to the Monterey Regional Compatible Use Plan kickoff meeting in downtown Monterey. The City of Monterey has funding to pull together all of the stakeholders and to look at encroachment issues, both sides surrounding military installations. So that will be happening over the next year, and I look forward to seeing what kind of comes out of that. On the 20th, I also attended the Habitat Conservation Plan for the the Fort Ord properties. It was an introduction of the concept of the Habitat Conservation Plan versus the current Habitat Management Plan for permittees and the possible JPA that our city manager discussed. The financial folks were missing, so quite a few questions about funding and long-term viability were brought up that couldn't be answered. So that too will be an ongoing set of meetings. 22nd, in response to a recent request for proposals for one of our parcels at Fort Ord, we met with the first of our developer teams to discuss the possibility of developing our main Fort Ord property. So that was number one. On the 25th, just Monday, we met with the development team number 2. So more will be coming in on that as well. Upcoming, again, I want to reiterate the art showcase focused just on Delray Oaks performing and visual artists. We have quite a few, nice eclectic group, so please come. Santa's Workshop is on the 8th, and on the 17th we'll be having a special city meeting to discuss the housing element. On that, I am done. And we can move on to the consent agenda. So, I have a feeling there's quite a few of us here for this. Any questions, any comments about the consent agenda? Anyone wishing to pull any item off of the consent agenda?
Well, start with council first and then public, right? Yeah, so I'd like to pull C3 from consent.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, can we go ahead and vote to approve the remainder of the items?
Did you want to take public comment on the remaining items?
Excuse me. Any public comment on any of the remaining items on the consent agenda? All right, public comment closed. Can we
move to approve?
We moved?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it passes unanimously. Mr. Gagliotti?
I had a number of statements prepared, but just catching up on emails this weekend, and wrote a letter to, I was responding to an email that was sent to me to a resident, and it really just kind of encapsulates everything, I think, that's kind of rolled up in what I think a lot of people are here to speak about. And so I'm just going to read that letter.
John, could you just reiterate for those that may not know what we're talking about, what it is you're questioning on item C3?
I have, actually, I've got I do have a couple of questions on that. One, I would like to change some of the assignments. I had a question, actually, Monterey Bay Community Power, is that something
No.
that we're going, I don't know why you can say no.
Excuse me? Because the ordinance does state that it has to be brought forward by the mayor.
So if we had 2 members of the council, we could bring it?
No. It states each selection shall be based upon a nomination made by motion of the mayor. You're welcome to read that. So can we talk about C3, please?
We're getting a reading.
So it does indeed say that so if none of the nominees made by a motion of the mayor are approved by the city council, any member of the city council may make a nomination for appointment. Such nomination shall be seconded and must be approved by a majority of the city council in order to be appointed. So if
It needs to be based on a nomination made by the mayor.
Is the Monterey Bay Community Power on this list that we have?
No. It's not time. I have spoken with both the executive director and they have indicated that they don't need this appointment yet. So we will be tabling this until it's the appropriate time.
I just want to get a final read. Can we add it to, I mean, what I find is important is that on the 4th, we're actually going to be brought into the fold. And even if we're not a voting member at that time, you know, being ex parte or just being able to sit there is a great, that gives you actually more advantage than just being public comment. You can actually participate, you can participate in discussion. You can't vote, but I think it's advantageous for us to actually join. I mean, I would encourage you, Mayor, then why don't we add it for just those reasons? I don't understand why we wouldn't want to add it.
So under the noticing, the agenda is what's required to be published ahead of time. So if this was a nomination for 2020, it could be added to what you have before you
Okay,
here.
all right. I mean, I think that's fine, but I would then like to just make it be known that I'd like to bring this up sooner than later. I think that we should be attending those meetings as a participant, even if we're ex parte and we're not voting. I think that's an important thing. It's an important place for us to be.
Okay, noted.
So then, I have an issue with the Monterey One appointment. I noticed that you put yourself in and removed me and put me an alternate. I'd like to actually swap that. Okay.
No, actually, I'm in as alternate.
What's that?
I'm on there as alternate.
Okay. Well, then, I would like to actually maintain my appointment. That's ultimately where I'd like to go. When we make the motion, we can kind of figure out what was, but why I pulled this item is that I noticed that you took me off the board. I'd like to actually make a case for me to stay on the board.
Okay.
Okay. So, so this was an email that I sent, and so it says, "Dear resident," hold on a second. Thank you for your email. Much has been conflated regarding the desalination plant approvals in the Monterey One the Pure Water Monterey expansion project. California Environmental Quality Act requires individual lead agencies for the two projects evaluate the projects based on environmental documents and technical reports generated for the respective projects. In the case of the desalination plant, the California Public Utilities Commission commissioned what became a 10-year study of the proposed project. In 2015, the CPUC published a multi-volume draft environmental document, the draft environmental impact report, and in CEQA, in the CEQA process, the critical project evaluation happens in the period between publishing the draft EIR and the final EIR. Several rounds of public comment, revision, more comment, settlement, resizing, and eventually agreement occurred in the 3 years of deliberation. The CEQA process is overly deliberative and for good reason. In 2018, the CPUC approved the final EIR with a huge addition of 3,500 acre-feet of water, of new recycled water, or from a new recycled water project, the Pure Water Monterey Advanced Water Purification Facility. This reduced the size of the desalination plant by a third to reduce environmental impacts and increase efficient use of diminishing groundwater supplies. This was a great revision and a perfect example of successful CEQA process. A major caveat in the CPUC findings was that the desalination plant must remain sufficiently sized to meet the worst case future drought condition. The recycled water project depends on upstream groundwater use and would be impacted by drought. The desalination plant and the Pure Water Monterey projects are components of an overall water portfolio designed to meet current and future demand as defined in the final EIR. The combined projects are efficient, drought and climate change proof, and minimize aggregate environmental impacts. In a separate effort directed by the CPUC, Monterey One was asked to evaluate whether it could expand the capacity of the Pure Water Monterey project with an additional 2,250 acre-feet before the end of 2020. This was a cautionary measure in the likely situation that the desalination plant may become delayed in the remaining entitlement phase. The additional recycled water would provide just enough to reduce diversions from the Carmel River to 3,370 acre-feet as mandated by the state water cease and desist order. The current diversions off the river amount to about between 6,000 and 7,000 acre-feet a year. However, the additional capacity would not meet the future demand of the identified in the final EIR, nor would it replace the 43,800 acre-feet overdraft in the Seaside Basin, and there are real questions regarding drought tolerance. For those reasons, the Pure Water Monterey expansion project was defined as a backup until the desalination plant came online. The evaluation of the Pure Water Monterey expansion project is a separate CEQA process that has only just begun and where Monterey One is the lead agency. The Pure Water Monterey expansion draft EIR was published just this month. Contrast that with the desalination plant's 3 years of deliberation between the DIR and the final EIR, and we are several months away from any agreement on environmental impact and viability. As the lead agency, Monterey One has the singular responsibility to manage that evaluation based on the findings, hopefully approve that final EIR. What's happening is that outside interests other than the Monterey One board are making determinations about project viability on their own from unvetted and unverified information. By CEQA, approval and certification of the final EIR is no one's role but Monterey One's. My asking at the release of the draft EIR after the Coastal Commission hearing was to give us the space to begin to evaluate that project to begin to conduct that evaluation as it pertains to our project. Others sought to use that document as proof of as a vetted, approved alternative to the desalination plant, and that is not the purpose of a draft EIR. Furthermore, the Monterey One board has not seen a draft of the terms and conditions required in a water purchase agreement. If we are to become, or if you are a critical water supplier, water purchase agreements are binding contracts that have stiff penalties for production shortfalls. The current water purchase agreement for the first 3,500 acre feet a year has no default clause, or has default clauses for production shortfalls, because it was written with the assumption that firm backing by the desalination plant. In the scenario without firm backing, the recycled water component of the portfolio becomes a critical water supplier. The Monterey One board has not deliberated that drastic change to our risk liability profile. However, many forces outside the board have already committed us to that. Finally, the additional source waters for the Pure Water Monterey expansion project have not been contracted. We've identified wastewater rights for about 85% of the total need to produce the 2,250 acre feet of purified water, but we have not signed long-term agreements for those rights. Also, that 85% amount is a seasonal value. There will be times of the year when the additional source waters will not be available again. If recycled water is identified as the critical water supply, Monterey One would have to provide firm backing, and we don't have that. That was the resident's name. The proposed water supply project that includes conservation measures, reduction in surface water diversions, banking surplus river waters, recycling used groundwater, storage replenishment, and desalination are a culmination of 20 years of design, planning, and construction. The desalination component is the new firm water source that replaces our damaged, unsustainably pumped groundwater supplies. We've drained those supplies to the brink, and there's no way to conserve or recycle our way back and meet future demand. The Peninsula water issues, CEQA, desalination, and the Pure Water Monterey project are complex but understandable. The problem is that it takes so long to get to a common fact base for people to be able to have a meaningful conversation, and the rest of it was just thank you for your thing. So, despite what you might read in the weekly, my concerns for project viability for the Pure Water Monterey expansion are not political. I have no opinion on who owns these water assets. I have worked with public, private, and even tribal utilities. They all have their benefits and they all have their issues. That is not my concern. What I am concerned about comes from being an experienced infrastructure developer. I have very, very real concerns about critical path reliability and long-term capacity of recycled water. We have to do it, but if recycled water becomes the critical path or the 60%, it's a huge risk. 60 to 70% of our critical path water, it becomes a huge risk. I've been installing weather stations in California, in Nevada, and actually the whole Southwest since 2013, or since 2003, for the last 13 or 14 years. And I have seen the data. The story is in the precip. The wet seasons are getting shorter and more intense. The dry seasons are getting longer, and they're getting more intense, and they're getting more frequent. Precip is pre-groundwater. Groundwater is pre-recycled water. And for us to be pinning a critical system on a diminishing input is just bad infrastructure planning. And that is what I'm extremely concerned about, especially in light of what I'm reading in our basin and how stressed that is. This is what is at the forefront of my mind every time I walk into that board. The board members have to ask tough questions. We have to be concerned, we have to challenge the assumptions. A lot is being made up for us. A lot of people are just making up assumptions and that we're just going to assume to take them. And that, there's a slim majority on that board that is very, very concerned. And we're concerned for these reasons. And that's exactly why I'm pushing back and asking, actually kind of demanding, that we, the Monterey Board, get the space to analyze the expansion project as is our role. That's where I stand.
Yeah. Any council comments, questions? Go ahead. Please.
Yes, I feel that since John has been on this and he has this board for the past year, he has the experience, the knowledge. I see no reason for taking somebody who is experienced and very knowledgeable and replacing that by somebody who is not as experienced and knowledgeable. And I don't feel that would be good for our city. And I feel we should keep John as the primary for the Monterey one, and that Councilmember Louise would be the alternate.
Thank you.
I just want to say that we all sit on these boards because we represent Delray Oaks. I think last year when we appointed these boards, we all agreed on it. And I've been on the city council for many, many, many years. I've sat on several boards. I myself got to a point where, because of my personal life, I cut back. I'm only sitting on MST, but I've sat on several other boards before, but I voluntarily gave up my boards. I don't think I've ever seen a change other than through elections, because you can't be on some boards, you have to be elected. Some boards, you don't have to be, elected, as a Dennis Aldeon with the waste management and mosquito abatement. However, I think that we all trust each other, and we all voted. First of all, second of all, this is usually a January item. I've never seen it in November before. So I was a little bit surprised by the appointments. I did get an email, asking about my boards, if I was comfortable with them, and I replied yes. However, I think that pulling somebody off of a board is kind of making a strong statement. And I trust that each one of us are looking out for Delray Oaks. We look out for the community at large, but we need to all be considering our city and what's good for our city, and we stand up for our city, and that's extremely important. And I don't want to send out a message that we're just like pulling people off of boards. So I'm concerned in that area. We need to remain united and strong as a city, and we need to trust each other on these boards. And so I'm not willing to make a statement out into the public at large and all the other board members like, what happened to John Gagliardi? News travels, and negative news travels much faster than positive news. So with that principle that I'm standing on, I would like to see John remain on his board. We all put time into our boards. I put time into MST. I've been to Washington and back. All of us put time into our boards, and to remove somebody unless they're really doing a terrible job. And I don't see that. I see the board chair has written a letter, a very articulate letter, and I don't see that there is a problem that would warrant the removal of a board member.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Getzel?
I would support John staying on Monterey One Water. First of all, having served in the military for a whole long time, and with the military, you're constantly, at least every 2 to 3 years, changing, which means your bosses change every 2 years, and you move every 3 years, so in 3 years, you can actually have 2 bosses, sometimes 3. And having historical knowledge and experience and being able to carry that forward is very, very important. And especially in water management, be it wastewater management, which is what Monterey One is. They are a wastewater processor. They are not a water producer. By happenstance, they're producing water for us through their management of the wastewater, but that is not their mission. It's wastewater management. And John's experience, his experience in dealing with projects, construction projects, infrastructure projects, and obviously from what he said tonight, obviously his experiences with statistics and planning, critical path analysis, which is something that I learned in my master's degree program, is very vital. You know, what you have to do immediately and what can you do on the periphery. John's experience and John's knowledge and the historical information that he's gathered in the 1 year he's already been on the board are vital for us to carry forward. So I support John staying on the Monterey One board.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to go out to the public. Are there any public comments?
Here we go. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Eric Tynan. I'm with the Castro Community Services District. I'm the general manager. I got to say, I'm really impressed with how much the commitment your board has in both regionally and for your city going on all these boards. It's impressive. I do know Councilman Guglielmo. He came to Castroville to talk about the water situation, to try to learn what, the CSIP program, Castroville situation, the 180-400. He's the only one who came to see us. The Coastal Commission did not come to see us, even though they said they reached out to the disadvantaged communities. Even though we were by far we're a severely disadvantaged community. 35,000 is the annual median household income for a family. But he came, he asked good questions. He's a strong advocate. This is a very complex and a lot of times controversial situation. A lot of it's driven by misinformation. And thank goodness he comes to these meetings and he pays attention. He can call me anytime. He reaches out, and I think he's a real strong advocate for Delray Oaks too. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the board, Paul Bruno, resident of the unincorporated Monterey, not far from here. I first wanted to say, wow, listening to Mr. Gagliardi's comments. He's shown that he definitely has a grasp of the issues. It's broad and it's deep, and you should be proud to have him representing you on Monterey One. I got here early enough, there wasn't a lot of copies out there, but I was early enough to get a copy of an email that was sent from Ron Stefani, the chairman of the board of Monterey One, so most people here might not have seen it. This email shows he clearly has the confidence of the chair, and that's important. I mean, they're not looking to remove him. I'll read a couple comments. His direct and applicable experience in large-scale infrastructure projects has been beneficial to deliberations in the areas of design, CEQA process, planning, budget, and contracts. Director Gagliardi does his homework and understands our system. A couple traits: strong leadership, technical expertise, and he recommends that you reappoint him to Monterey One board. That is the chair speaking, and those are very strong comments. I also serve as the chair of the Seaside Groundwater Basin Water Master, where John currently serves. Currently, looking at this chart, if you went with as proposed, the mayor would sit on 5 and Mr. Gagliardi would serve on 1. Or with him staying on Monterey One, he'd serve on 2 and the mayor would serve on 4 committees. Let me tell you a little bit about the Water Master. It says that we meet monthly. Actually, we prepare to meet monthly, but we meet as needed, which is average about 5 times a year. In other words, he has a lot of time to attend the other meetings. So if you only left him with that one, it'd only be 5 meetings and be a waste of his brain power, because he has a lot of brain power. So I don't think he's overtaxed with the Water Master. That doesn't take a lot of his time. He needs to be on Monterey 1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dennis Ollie in Delray Oaks. I was privileged to represent the city for, I think, 13 years, maybe 12 years on the Monterey One Water Board. It used to be the Monterey Regional Water Pollution Control Agency. It took me over 2 years to truly understand all the complexities of what we were dealing with the water projects. We had to deal with the farm community over issues of using water that they claimed was their water, and they were justified in that complaint. We successfully dealt with them. It took us years of dealing. It was a very complex issue. This is not a job that you can learn overnight and do properly to represent your community. So I had the good fortune of having time to get into the job before things got really complicated. We did pass the Pure Water Monterey project, and now the expansion is under consideration. At the time I was on the board, and I think the board's position continues to be, that board's position is that this is a backup, not an alternative to desalinization. I am not a person who wants to pay 4 times the amount of money I'm paying today for water. But, you know, we all need to stand by, because the first wave of water price increase is going to come, and it's going to come as a result of using Pure Water Monterey project. That water costs a lot more than it does to take out of the ground. So you're going to see your bills go up because of that. And for people out here that have misunderstood the information and accused our duly elected council member of self-serving, they're making a huge mistake. Please don't do that. This is not John is not a pro-Cal-Am person. John is a logical person. He has digested this data. It's extensive and very complex. And I'll tell you right now, if you think that we should be relying, as he points out, on 60% of our water coming from recycling, we have watched the water that goes out to that treatment facility decline year after year, and it will continue to decline. And as soon as we have a drought, folks, that's it. You're not going to have any water. So stand by. And please, I think John needs to remain on this board. He's a level-headed guy. He's representing your best interest, whether you agree with it or not. Honestly, he is doing that. He has done his homework in an extensive way. He knows the numbers, and we got to pay attention to the numbers, folks. That's all we got, that water in the basin. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis.
Kevin Dayton, I'm the Government Affairs Liaison for the Monterey Peninsula Chamber of Commerce. Not a Delray Oaks resident, I'm a Monterey resident. First, regarding the Monterey Bay Community Power appointment, I'm not sure that the public would realize from your discussion that you don't actually get your own city seat on this. It's actually a shared seat with Marina and Seaside, and I believe right now Ian Oglesby is the person. So it isn't like you get your own seat. So as you consider what to do with that in the future, I guess you'll get your chance in the rotation eventually, but it's not like you just appoint somebody on you're on it. Regarding this issue about who's on Monterey One Water, I do a lot of tracking throughout the state of people abusing the California Environmental Quality Act. That's what CEQA is referred to. Everybody's talking about as if they know about it, but it's that particular law meant to protect the environment, but unfortunately often used in a variety of ways by a variety of people, including businesses competing against each other. It's really out of hand, but it's pretty much impossible to get it reformed. So anyway, in August, I was looking over some papers and I saw that an organization was filing massive environmental objections to a battery storage facility in Moss Landing Tesla is building. It was California Unions for Reliable Energy, CURE, which does this all over the state. So anyway, I sent out a tweet about it, and immediately reporters started calling saying we want to know about it. I ended up getting an interview, and they said, after I did it, they said, we're having problems getting people to talk about this. I said, oh yeah, it's pretty routine. Developers are not eager to talk about how they're being extorted. I said, but you could try this guy, John Gag Gagliotti, who endured the extortion when he was working with the California Flat Solar Plant. I mean, he probably won't talk to you about it, but give it a shot and see what happens. And anyway, I was watching that evening, and what do you know? He actually dared to talk about how CEQA is abused for these purposes, including on the California Flats Solar Project. I was very impressed by that because I deal with a lot of people behind the scenes, and very few people are willing to come out and say how this is done. And what you're talking about how CEQA is dragged out for years, I call it the lather, rinse, repeat, where environmental review goes so long that opponents can turn around and say, well, what was in effect 7 years ago when you started this has changed, so now you got to start over again. This is a racket that's used throughout the state for long projects. I think you know your CEQA stuff well. I think that's absolutely needed. Not everybody on Monterey One Water is fully informed on these policy issues, and I think that his input is very good. You know about CEQA and its good things and its bad things. So that's my thinking about the matter. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Hello, Alexis Bunton, Delray Oaks resident, and I'm not as informed about these issues as I would like to be because I'm very busy, but I agree with a lot of what Councilman Gagliotti said, questions about being on the Monterey Bay Community Power Board. I don't know, but perhaps had we joined it when we initially had the opportunity, we might be in a better position now. So we should have listened to the citizens in the first place so we could be in that position. And secondarily, I think you make some good points about knowing about infrastructure. I know a lot of people who are for and against the desalination plant. I personally have not made up my mind. We do have the most expensive water in the country, though, and we need people who are very experienced to handle these issues. I agree with that. My concern is what we've heard in the news true? Was an environmental impact report delayed before a vote? And if that is true, then my concern is that people on these boards, our elected officials, think they're smarter than the public to be able to give public commentary on these reports in the due time so that the right decision can be made. I don't know if it's true, but if that's the case, then I would be very concerned about having trust in you on that board spot. If it's not true, then everything else you've said, go ahead and represent us. But that's my concern, and I think that us citizens, I mean, you're here in your spots because of us, and I think that collectively we have a lot more intelligence collectively than a few experienced individuals. So that's my comment.
Thanks, Alexis. Frederica Jones, Delray Oaks. I don't think there's any dispute as far as Mr. Gagliotti's knowledge or time that he has really put into the water complex, the topic for our peninsula. Unfortunately, that's not what has us concerned here today. As we've struggled to learn more about the different projects, it's difficult to hear and learn that when you're attending these board meetings, such as the Monterey Water One Board, and you have your representative withhold documents from the Central Coast, the California Coastal Commission, and whether Mr. Gagliotti is for desal or whatever other water program, that's not the issue. And we understand that he is on those boards to make those decisions. But to perform with an unethical behavior of withholding documents for a public coastal commission so that they can make their determination, that is what the root cause is for the concerns for the citizens. If you look at California Constitution, Article 1, Declaration of Rights, Section 3B states the public has the right of access of information concerning the conduct of the people's business, and therefore the meetings of public bodies and the writings of public officials and agencies shall be open to the public scrutiny. Mr. Gagliotti, you were elected by the residents of Delray Oaks, and you took an oath to perform ethically and also to represent the citizens of Delray Oaks.
we see what you have performed, that you have not followed through with that, and that's what disturbing and is appalling. That is the reason why there are so many residents who are suggesting that you not represent us on the Monterey One Water Board. And for each of the city council members that are requesting that he remain on and that you have the confidence and the vote for him to stay on, are you not questioning the ethics that has been already performed? And are you saying that that's okay? I've heard you say that you trust his judgment, but unethical practice makes it look really difficult and does not give Delray Oaks a positive manner of moving forward. And other government situations may come up in the future that could cause a black eye for Delray Oaks on if we're known as having unethical practices. Thank you.
Thanks, Frederica.
Hello, my name is Adam Scow. I'm here with Public Water Now. I want to be here in support of the mayor joining the Monterey One Water Board. We know over 60% of the voters of Delray Oaks supported Measure J last year. Certainly there are very high concerns about the water rates and the potential that they could double again from a desalination plant. So when a board member tries to delay information to the California Coastal Commission where that decision will be made, that's very concerning when we want to see a cheaper option succeed if possible, and we think it is very possible. So we are here in support of an improvement on that board and want to thank the mayor.
Thank you.
My name is Amy Anderson. I'm from Carmel, and I also speak, I'm on the board of Public Water Now, and I am speaking in support of the mayor. Monterey One Water had a vision and expert leadership, and they achieved an enormous success with the building of this award-winning wastewater treatment and recycling facility. It addresses the California state new mandate that single-use water that goes to the ocean or estuaries needs to be significantly reduced by recycling. We need to recycle our water. Monterey One Water is so far ahead with this project, and despite delays, the promise of this technology are huge and game-changing, not to mention environmentally sound. And if you all, I don't know if you all know about it, but there is a much larger project in the same kind of design in Orange County that provides water, recycled water, to a much larger population and in the same droughts conditions that we have had for quite a long time. I want to summarize John Ainsworth's statement at the close of the recent California Coastal Commission meeting. He assured the public and the commission that the Coastal Commission staff would follow the facts. They would follow sound science, the law, and also just a good dose of common sense in formulating their next staff recommendation. As you are all aware, they recommended that the Coastal Commission not approve the permit for the desal plant. They're a very smart bunch of folks, and they know an awful lot about the situation. They understand that the stakes are high and that it's important to get this right, and that's what we all know. We are tired of waiting for this to happen, but it's extremely important that we get this right and that we get the alternative that provides a reliable, sustainable water supply that is environmentally preferred, environmentally just, and consistent with the Coastal Act. Having attended the Monterey One Water Board meeting at which Mr. Gagliotti attempted to sabotage the expansion by preventing the delivery of the environmental impact report to the Coastal Commission. He didn't win that argument, but he argued in favor of it very strongly. I would ask if this makes him the best person to serve on the Monterey One Water Board on behalf of Delray Oaks, and whose interests is he representing. The information that he read in his email, a lot of it was purely Cal-Am data, and some of it was not correct. So I think that he would be best represented by another person on this board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Ron Stefani from Monterey One Water. I'm from Castroville, the community of Castroville. I've been on the board of Monterey One Water for over 10 years. My second round as chairman. I'm speaking for myself tonight, but with the experience of working with John over the last year, he's an asset to Monterey One Water. Like I've said in my letter, I'm not going to try to read the whole thing again, and you've got the copies. If you were at last night's meeting, we got a great explanation on why the Pure Water Monterey, the original Pure Water Monterey, is running late right now. It's running late because of technical difficulties, computer glitches, electronic problems, stuff that John understands. And he was working real hard with our general manager and our staff and the contractor to try to get Pure Water Monterey off the ground. Here's a project that a lot of people are talking about that's going to be your water for the peninsula, and we haven't produced any yet. And we're already having glitches. So the liability issues that John talks about, that's what concerns me in Castroville. That's majority of Monterey One Water residents and ratepayers do not live in the area where Pure Water Monterey is going to be served. We live in Castroville and Salinas. Salinas has the biggest population of ratepayers. And so why should we be liable for a water source, municipal water source for the peninsula? You know, we're a farm working community. Castroville's made up of all the farm workers. When we started having water problems, I talked to my constituents, said we're going to fight in this GSA, we're going to fight for the urban users versus the ag. You know what they told me? Said, I want my job first. We'll buy bottled water. I want my job first. So the expanded project was a backup, as stated. I just started reading the EIR, the summary that Denise Duffy states about the source water. She uses a term called reasonably likely to be there. And so I had to go to the dictionary and look that up. What does reasonably likely mean? And one definition is it's just a little bit less than more likely. So when you look at more likely, that's about 60-40? So she's saying in the EIR, reasonably likely the source water will be there. That's what, a 50-50 chance? Is that what you want for your municipal water system? So I urge you to keep John on the board. He's been a great help for Monterey One Water. And thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sam Teal. I'm a long-term resident, over 40 years of the peninsula. And most of that time I've spent in the hospitality industry. In fact, I was chair of government affairs for a long time, and I've been president of that Monterey County Hospitality Association 2 times. So that's remarkable that I've never been here before. And what that says is that while we know what you guys are doing, we're not alarmed by it. You guys do a great job of representing Delray Oaks as well as the larger community. We don't have a problem with that. But this is the first time. And I have to say that John's appointment to M1 exemplifies what Delray Oaks does. It put a great guy in a right position. He's demonstrated he's the right man for the position. His technical background, expertise, and apolitical positions have earned the respect of the entire community, especially the business community. It would be a serious loss to M1, especially just as the expansion EIR is under review, if he was removed from that board. So please don't do that, and thank you, and have a nice Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too.
Hello, my name's Monica Kim. I was raised in Marina, currently live in Monterey, went to school in Seaside. I consider this peninsula my home. The water, everyone keeps mentioning about a water portfolio diversification. When Cal-Am has messed up, when they had more diversification and more sources to pull from than Marina, which only has the aquifers as their sole source of water. And Marina has managed their sole source of water for decades. versus Cal-Am, which has messed up even though they had the Carmel River, the Seaside Basin, and other sources. The desal pipes will destroy the aquatards that prevent saltwater intrusion into marina. That will lower the quality of fresh water in marina and destroy our only source of water. I feel sorry for Castroville, but if Castroville wants to take 100% of the negative effects, then they could put their own desal. Because marina will take 100% of all the negative effects of our tax burdens to clean our water, as well as to the legal suits to protect our water source, and zero benefits. So if Delray Oaks wants to take 100% of all the negative effects, from tax burdens to the cleanup of the salt water intruding into fresh water, then go ahead, put a desal pipe as long as you subsidize 100%. Because again, marina will take zero benefits and 100% of the damage. That's the same with Monterey. If they want a desal plant, bulldoze a golf course, put it on their golf course. See how much of a fight they'll put up. But they can take 100% of the damage. If they're willing to take 100% of the damage, go ahead. They can put their own desal pipe. But my point is, why should half of Seaside, Marina, and Fort Ord, which is serviced by a public water entity and depends on one sole source of water, which is the aquifers, be destroyed for the benefit of everyone else when we get zero benefits? That's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Faye Magira. I'm a resident of Seaside. I would like to respectfully address the mayor, Allison Kerr, the council members, and those present. Delray Oaks' representative on the Monterey One board, Mr. Gagliotti, as an elected official, advocated that a public document, the SEIR, a document that belongs to the men, women, and children of this district, be suppressed to fit another timetable, not the timetable of the public's right to know. The water issues before all of our communities have a lasting effect on all of us and on all our children. We would do well not to become blinded by short-sightedness and short-term gain, but above all, not to violate the public's right to know, a major principle of our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Susan Schiavone, Seaside resident and a member of Public Water Now. Many of us were very disappointed that the Delray Oaks representative to Monterey One board thought it was appropriate to attempt to interrupt the SECA process and delay release of the draft supplemental EIR for Pure Water Monterey expansion, thus holding that draft supplemental EIR until the Coastal Commission voted on the project and disrupting the ability of the Coastal Commission to fully evaluate the expansion of Pure Water Monterey as a possibly more appropriate environmental choice for water. This was a very misguided attempt to control a public agency process by denying the public access to a public document. This was actually a violation of SECA, sections 15087 and 15085A, which legally directs that the EIR shall be released to the public as soon as it is completed. As the Measure J campaign coordinator for Seaside, Delray Oaks, and Sand City, I know the voters of Delray Oaks supported Measure J and also elected George Riley to represent them on the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District Board. The actions taken by Mr. Gagliotti do not seem to represent the intentions of constituents in Delray Oaks. Further, I'd like you to know that the State Water Resources Control Board itself has issued a directive in April of 2019 to utilize recycled water in areas on the coast where there is seawater intrusion and there are discharges to ocean water and the ground basins are overdrafted. That is a direct directive from the state, and we should follow that. I believe that the Coastal Commission scientific staff will do a thorough review of this project. The current staff report has stated that the desal plant fails every criteria to meet the Coastal Act. The recycling project is needed and required and should be pursued. I encourage everyone here to go to the Coastal Commission site and read the report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Scott Dick. I'm the Government Affairs Director for the Monterey County Association of Realtors, who is headquartered right down the street. The Board of Directors has sent me here this evening to ask that John Gagliotti be reappointed to the M1 Water Board. Why would you switch horses in the middle of the stream? Excuse my water reference. Without a good reason. It strikes us as punitive, since Councilmember Gagliotti voiced his concerns over both the MPWMD's demand report, and that was the gist of the argument. I was there at the Monterey 1 water meeting. His argument was, we need to send a letter to the Coastal Commission telling them this is backup, not an alternative. That was the majority of the report. Holding back the EIR was a subtext, and I don't remember him saying we should hold it forever. He couldn't if he wanted to. And the M1 board was not about to delay the release of that report, and they didn't. Elected officials in this community have promulgated the erroneous idea that M1 could be an alternative to the desal plant. This strikes me, and I'm a social scientist. I have my doctorate in leadership and organizational development. This reminds me of groupthink, where people make decisions based on social pressures. There's 8 key areas to think about. I'll give you just 4. One is the rationale. Perpetrators of this behavior ignore and discount warnings and negative feedback that may cause the group to reconsider its previous assumptions. Morality. Perpetrators ignore the ethical and moral consequences of their decisions and believe unquestionably in the morality of their in-group. And I would point in the direction of people who are advocating that we eliminate the desal. In 1993, we eliminated the desal. In 1995, we eliminated the dam, and here we are. And the desal plant that they defeated in 1993 was the exact same one they're arguing for now. 4.6, put it in front of the voters. The voters said it's too expensive, we don't want it. And we don't want the dam. And now, here we are, once again. 2 more, stereotypes. Members of the group possess negative and stereotypical views of their enemies. I probably fit in that category. And last, mind guards. Perpetrators of groupthink may appoint themselves to protect the group and the group leader from information that may be problematic or contradictory to the group's views, decisions, or cohesiveness. This leads to 4 main areas. Bad decisions due to lack of opposition. If you look at collaboration, thus collaborative teams contain somebody or more than one person who's the naysayer. Lack of creativity. Overconfidence and groupthink negatively impacts on successful problem solving. Optimal solutions to problems may be overlooked, and lack of feedback on decisions, and hence poor decision making. If M1 Water needs anybody today to get us through this, regardless of what happens with the Coastal Commission, it's John. And that's coming directly from our board. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim Clark's Delray Oaks, Villa Verde. And I'm glad the previous speaker brought up the dam in 1995 because there was a statement earlier, collectively we have a lot more intelligence. Well, collectively, and whenever that was that we voted that the dam go away, we lost a source of precip water that would have been a heck of a lot less expensive than anything we're looking at today. So I'm not too sure about that other statement. And then to sit here and once again hear people emotionally attack a sitting council person and to question the integrity of this man, to know that these same people that are questioning his integrity are the same ones that ran the negative campaign where they defamed and cast aspirations on the integrity of our previous mayor, and the distasteful picture that had Mayor Jerry Edelin with his head in his sand and his butt sticking up in the air. Well, what else would we expect from this? But probably the biggest point and the most meaningful thing I can think of all the speakers I've heard tonight, John presented an extremely eloquent presentation of his understanding of the situation, and we haven't heard one mention, not one thing that talks to the mayor's expertise or how she would understand the situation and be a better fit than Mr. Gagliotti. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Susan Ragsdale Cronin. And I'm so sorry, I have to find it. I wrote. Oh, okay, here we go. So I'm going to go against the grain here. I adore Mr. Gagliotti, and I have great concern for his family and his well-being. And I've talked to him about his views, and they're a lot different than mine, and I understand where he's coming from. However, I have several concerns, one of which is that he aligned himself with John Phillips on the Monterey One Water Board, who is right now being studied for campaign finance violations. And I understand that this investigation is just the tip of the iceberg. John Phillips has a lot of misdeeds that are going to be coming very public very soon. John tried to hold back the supplemental ERR for the expansion of the recycled water project. And since it shows it can potentially be a replacement for detail cell. So if Mr. Gagliotti had prevailed, significant information already in government's hands would not have been provided to the Coastal Commission before it makes $1 billion decision affecting every water user from Pebble Beach to Castroville. Thank you. Thanks, Susan.
Hi, Ken Rutherford. Back to Delray Oaks again, a resident here, was here earlier, left, and have come back. I just want to say I think my position might be a little bit different than everyone else's that knows the issues of water. I'm just now trying to educate myself on those and have been doing that for a couple of months now, in addition to the housing element that I'm trying to educate myself on in Delray Oaks. Came to the meeting yesterday to try to do that. I went to the meeting, the meeting that you actually were, I guess, is being disputed here today, to try to educate myself. I sent you a few emails. I don't know if that was a response to me or not. I sent several emails just asking you to help educate me as a citizen of Delray Oaks, because I was reading a lot of things in the paper, hearing a lot of people talk, and I never got a response. Nothing. So I had to continue to educate myself. I also think that this is an important opportunity for the process. It's the mayor that gets to appoint the people, and always has, apparently, and apparently that has changed recently, as to not allowing the mayor the sole discretion to appoint people to these different boards. I think it's important that if she's choosing to appoint someone else, that we recognize that. As citizens, listen to the people that have spoken. The citizens have spoken. And partly it's because we felt left out, we felt we weren't responded to, or we didn't agree with the position you were taking. I did feel that there was some gamesmanship going on at the meeting, at the Monterey One meeting. There was some gamesmanship with respect to the dates and timing, but I wanted to know, I wanted to hear from you. I didn't feel like you were responsive to me as a citizen of Delray Oaks. Again, I don't have a position yet on desal or no desal or housing or not, but I do have a position with respect to the procedure. The mayor can appoint who she would like. And if you really are concerned about the issue, I would say sit second to her, educate her, be there for her. Let her be the one representing us in Delray Oaks. I think she's heard from the citizens. I'd only met her one time prior to the meeting that I went to at Monterey one time. After the meeting, she recognized me at that meeting. I'd gone to her coffee on a Saturday morning, is where I met her. She recognized me at the meeting and made an effort after the meeting to find out what my thoughts were on the meeting, what was my interest in water on the peninsula. And she's followed up a few times since then. So I know that she's concerned about the citizens of Delray Oaks. And I think regardless of the issue of water, that's what we're asking for. We're asking for the people that are representing us on these boards, represent our interests, listen to us, and educate us. That's it.
Thank you, Ken.
Hello, Sabrina Siqueiros of the Oaks, right up the street. To add to that statement, I am here as well just to remind this council of the importance of transparency. I think for our community, it's not only something that clearly has a very strong sentiment, but it's actually something we vote on. Transparency, which individuals we can trust to truly represent our interests, to provide us with the information we need to understand those more complex, perhaps, if you will, issues. So once again, while I do appreciate the cognizance of experience and knowledge and all of that goodness, at the end of the day, what matters to our community is transparency. And we will continue to remind those around us of that as many times as we need to. And I just ask that once again, you respect that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sabrina. Would you like to?
I can't get up there.
That's okay.
Can she take a microphone? Do we have a microphone?
Yeah.
Is it on? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a member of Public Water Now. I live in Monterey, just down the street.
Can you tell us your name, please?
Oh, Tammy Jennings.
Thanks.
And I support the motion to remove Mr. Gagliotti from the Monterey Water One Board for his lack of support for his community voters and the attempt to sabotage the expansion of the SEIR information getting to the California Coastal Commission. Mr. Gagliotti is not representing the interests of Delray Oaks voters who elected him. 61% of Delray Oaks voters voted yes on Measure J, and he's trying, in my opinion, to sabotage that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Tammy.
Happy Thanksgiving.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor, council members, others. My name's John Tilley, and I'm glad to be here tonight. I have the opportunity for a number of years to sit on the Oversight Committee of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. I've been appointed by multiple directors of board members in the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. I take it very serious. As we all do, I take water very serious. It's very important for all of us. I've also, in that capacity and just in my interest of water, attended numerous Monterey One Water meetings. I also attend meetings for the Salinas Valley Groundwater Sustainability Agency. So I have a pretty fair idea of how some of the things are shaping up in the area. One thing I've noticed is that by attending the Monterey One Water meetings, that the people on that board are saying to us that we don't want to be the sole source of water. We're supposed to be a backup plan. We're not supposed to be the provider of drinking water for everybody on the Monterey Peninsula and the Cal-Am, what currently is the district. And mentioning Cal-Am, let me say right now that I am not a supporter of Cal-Am. If Cal-Am is taking more money from us than they should, then the feasibility will show that. They'll be bought, and that'll be great. Or failing that, we can go to the CPUC and say, hey, Cal-Am's, we're charging us too much. We can fix things that way too. What I'm seeing quite often, though, is that there's this combination by the folks who are so virulent about buying Cal-Am that they're willing to shortchange and derail the production of a true sustainable water system here that includes the DSL plant. If you look at the opponents of the desal plant, they're the ones who are telling the Monterey One Water Board, no, you're wrong. You should be the sole source of water on the peninsula. You should, they're trying to make them present themselves to be something that they don't want to be. And it's unfortunate. So what I have seen with John is that he recognizes that that board is being used as a political football, and he, for my money, has taken a neutral stance on it. He is just trying to protect the integrity of what's being done at Monterey One Water, and he does it in a way that most other people on that board are not able to do. He brings with him a technical expertise and experience and intelligence that's been applied to that knowledge base that's very valuable. You should be very thrilled to have him as your representative on that board. I would encourage you to make sure you continue that. I think we all benefit by having John on the Monterey One Water Board and maintaining some neutrality. So as the battle goes on over ownership, that the idea remains that a water supply project that properly serves this community is the #1 goal, and ownership is a second goal. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Hi, everybody. Kevin Raskoff, Delray Oaks. I hadn't decided to actually read this until about 5 minutes ago. I just recently was appointed to the Monterey Peninsula Parks District and has to have gone through ethics training, which I'm sure everyone that's sitting down up there has had to go through, maybe the same or a different version. I went through the California Fair Political Practices Commission's ethic training for cities, counties, and special districts in California. Just did it over this last week, and with all the stuff that's been going on with this topic, it took on a lot of really interesting components for me personally, and I learned a ton. It was way more interesting than I ever imagined it would be. So I guess what I want to talk about is sort of what is ethics, and I think it's a term that's been thrown around a lot today. And I learned a lot in these couple hours that I spent doing this, and I want to share them kind of with everybody just to kind of get our minds maybe thinking about it in a slightly different way. So these are all direct quotations, by the way, from the training, which is part of the California government, and I have a little personal comment at the end. So, quote, "Public perception matters a great deal in one's analysis of what is the right thing to do in public service. Public officials are stewards of the public trust. Public service ethics is not only about doing the right thing, but also about the public's confidence that the right thing has been done. Community relations to the public's view of the official's responsiveness are seriously undermined when it appears that an official is not listening to the input being provided by the public." It went on to say, "Ask yourself these questions in response to should you do something. What decisions, behavior, or course of action will be best to promote the public's trust in my leadership and that of my agency? Would I want to read about a certain course of action on the front page of my local newspaper? And how would I want to be remembered as a public official?" I found these things really kind of soul-searching in a very unexpected way. It further went to say, "You need to ask yourself whether merely being legal is going to meet you and your constituents' standards for ethical behavior." And what I learned through this training this week was that, contrary to how I thought about ethics previously, ethics isn't really about doing the right thing necessarily. It's much more complicated than that. And so doing what we think is personally correct is just sort of not entirely what it's all about. It's not really enough. Perception and responsiveness are a key component of public service and our ethical requirements as servants. Ethics are based on the concepts of morality, and our morals are partially defined by our society and our community. The public must be confident that the right things are being done for the right reasons for actions to be considered ethical. So, for me, I've had many a conversation with John, and I think that I don't personally feel like he thinks he did anything incorrect, right? I think he made the right decisions as he sees them, and so I think that's why many of the people in the audience aren't necessarily talking about the specifics of the numbers or the percentages or anything. It's sort of more this issue of, is he responsive to the community? Has he reached out enough at the right time when people wanted to hear it? I think that's why a lot of what we're hearing about in the group is sort of thinking about just the perception aspect. It's not necessarily whether something incorrect was done so much as the perception of that reality. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Madam Mayor, Council Member, good evening. My name is Frank Geisler. I'm the CEO of Monterey Peninsula Chamber of Commerce, and I live in Monterey. And I'm here to announce that it's raining outside. The Chamber has a position in regards to water to provide a reliable source of water for all the programs that are born in the area here, whether it's desal or recycling or ASR or conservation. So we are not acting on behalf of any particular entity, but we're just interested in the secure water supply in the long run. So the question before you this evening is, who is the most qualified person to represent you in the city on the M1 Water Board? And Mr. Gagliardi's qualifications are known by many, but I would like to just simply say a science degree in mechanical engineering, and also working in high tech on specific applications for an energy sector. Successfully developing Arizona's first utility-scale wind farm, and prospecting for future solar power project sites and installing specialized meteorological stations. So he is actively served on the Planning Commission, and he's also holding a seat on Fora Monterey One Seaside Basin Water Master Board and its Technological Advisory Committee. So I urge you to keep this gentleman on Monterey One Board, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Any other public comments? All right, we're going to close public comments. I have a few words to say and to explain my decision. First, I am not questioning Mr. Gagliardi's experience. He has the technical background. However, I am committed to open and honest government, and I work hard to ensure decisions and discussions are made in the full view of the public. Although the city has previously made board appointment decisions in early January, the MADI Act, or California Government Code 54972, states on or before December 31st of every year, each legislative body shall prepare an appointment list of all regular and ongoing boards, commissions, and committees which are appointed by the legislative body of the local agency. Today is our last regular council meeting of the year, and appointments go into effect on 1 January. On Monday and Tuesday, November 18 and 19, I emailed each of the council members to confirm board appointments and let Mr. Gagliardi know I would be replacing his seat on the Monterey One board. I offered to discuss my decision. Although we had not had a conversation, he replied, "I understand why you have to propose the change. I'm not so sure." My decision to change the Delray Oaks representative to the Monterey One Water Board has to do with addressing ethical and fiduciary impropriety of an action taken by him, the current city representative. Excuse me. At the October 28th board meeting, Mr. Gagliardi moved to delay release of the Pure Water Monterey Expansion Supplemental EIR, which is a taxpayer-funded document. This was an attempt to suppress information from both the public and the California Coastal Commission prior to the November 14 meeting, where they would be making a critical decision on the future of the peninsula's water issues. Concerned residents, elected officials, and other local leaders have reached out to me about the attempt and also the lack of response from him when asked for clarity. California Assembly Bill 339, authored by Ralph Brown of the Brown Act in 1953, declared, "The people of this state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. The people, in their delegating authority, do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so they may retain control over the instruments that they have created. In light of the breach of ethics on this issue, Mr. Gagliardi should not be either the primary or the secondary appointee to the Monterey One Water Board. I move to approve the full appointment list as was submitted." All right.
I make a motion that we make the changes, the following changes. I'd like to be reappointed to the, there it is, Monterey One Water Board, and have Ms. Getzel
be the alternative.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. 4-1. Thank you all for coming this evening. But we have some other business to attend to. So old business is a Fort Ord property update, and I'll turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The issue before you is an update on the status of our city-owned parcels north of South Boundary Road. I wanted to give the council and the public an update on the situation there. As all will recall, the city spent the better part of a year negotiating a exclusive negotiating rights agreement with a development team. The council approved the exclusive negotiating rights agreement only to have the development team partnership dissolved before they had signed the agreement. Over the past 60 days, staff has advertised the development opportunity, received 3 excellent proposals for development, conducted a staff level review of the 3 and dropped one of the 3, moved forward into panel interviews with the remaining 2. The panel has consisted of the mayor, Councilmember Gagliotti, myself, our economic development consultant, David Zender, and our planning and environmental consultant, Denise Duffy. Both of those interviews occurred, one Friday and one yesterday. We're making excellent progress conducting due diligence on both counts. And as we reach terms and ultimately have a recommendation for one development team, staff will bring that to council, both in open session and in closed session as appropriate, should there be a need for a negotiation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any council questions, comments? Let's go out to the public. Any public comment on the Fort Ord property update? All right, public comment closed. We'll move on to new business. And about all A, B, and C, I'll turn over to our city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The next item before us is our audited financial statements for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019. This is the third financial audit that we've conducted since I've been here at the city, and I'm pleased to say that it represents an incremental improvement year on year as to how we have been doing as a city in terms of adhering to our fiduciary responsibilities, putting internal controls in place, and managing the taxpayer dollar. I want to recognize Roberto Moreno, sitting back there in the pink shirt. Roberto is our financial consultant and helps with the formulation of the budgets, as well as oversees our effort going through the audit. I want to recognize Kim Carvalho and Karen Minami, particularly Kim, but also Karen, in working through audit preparation, getting ready for an audit, going through the audit, and then making the corrections based on audit findings. Terrific staff work. They've implemented a financial software. When I first got here to the city, we were using Quicken. That's just where we were as a city. I'm sorry, QuickBooks. And we're now using a much more sophisticated suite of financial accounting software that allows for fund-based accounting and a whole bunch of different things that allow for our budgets to be more transparent, more accurate, but required a significant amount of training on the part of staff, and they've done it, and we're doing really well. So I just want to briefly turn this over to our auditor. If you'd like to make a few brief comments. Thanks, sir.
Well, thank you for inviting me out to share with you the results of the FY19 audit. My name is Paul Pham. I'm with Siobhan and Associates, and we are the city's independent auditors. Okay, so I just want to hit on some key financial highlights from this year, and then I'll go over some of the audit results that we came to. So, as a city, the city's net position as of June 30th, 2019 was about $4.4 million, and that is a $1.4 million increase over last year, so you guys are increasing in that direction. As far as the fund statements, which are kind of the way the city operates from day to day, if they look at the general fund and whatnot, so the ending fund balance for the general fund as of June 30th was $6.6 million, which is a increase of $5.8 million. Most of that is attributed to the reclassification that was done on the land that was held for resale. So that covered about $4.4 million of that. Okay, so net of that reclassification of the land held for resale, the fund balance for the city as a whole actually increased by $1.3 million. So going in the positive direction there. The reclassification of that land increased current assets by $8.9 million and also increased your current liabilities by $4.5 million. So those are kind of some of the significant changes that you'll see in the audit report and the financial statements there. As far as the audit itself, it was a clean audit. We didn't have any exceptions to our audit opinion, meaning it's an unmodified opinion. We didn't have any material weaknesses that were noted, no significant passed on adjustments, and we worked really well with the team and the city, so with no disagreements with management, and so the audit went very well. And then, as Dina was mentioning, you're definitely going in the right direction. So.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I mean, thank you, sir. Any questions for the auditor?
Any questions?
Comments?
No, that's great.
It's a great budget.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to highlight, so first of all, this is our third year with Siobhan and Associates, and Paul and his team. They come in here, they make me feel stupid. They look like they're 12, they're wunderkind, they're really, really smart, really, really bright, switched on accountants, and they put us through our paces, which is exactly what they're supposed to do. It's exacting, mostly on Karen and Kim, and they do a really good job. So thank you to the auditor. The issue of no findings is particularly relevant. Am I using the right term, Roberto? Yeah. Good. That's the first time in years and years that we have had no findings, and that again is a reflection of Karen and Kim, Roberto, the staff's efforts to do things right, to listen to the corrections recommended in years past, to make the corrections on the findings, and to just do the due diligence day in, day out. That's not terribly sexy, but is very, very necessary for proper accounting. So that completes the report.
I would like to thank Dino for making such wonderful progress for our city. Delray Oaks is in such a better position than it was prior to Dino's arriving, and thank you.
Thank you.
Any other?
I want to reflect on that too. I think Dino's leadership is filtering down throughout the whole staff, and I can't say enough good things about you. Thank you very much for being a leader.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Do we need a motion to receive the audit? Public comment.
Can we go out for public comment?
Of course.
All right, no public comment?
Sure.
Motion.
Yeah.
It's an action.
Yeah.
So
I'll make a motion that we approve the audit.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Let's move on to item 10B.
All right.
This is the fun one.
The item before us here is the disposition of the June 30th, 2019 unassigned unappropriated fund balance. The great news for us as a city is that we are cash rich right now. We're not in great financial shape because you have to look at us structurally, you have to look at our total debt, you have to look at revenues over time. But right now, as we sit here after several years of trending in the right direction on revenues, we are in a good cash position. So the ending fund balance from last year was $1,446,942 that we did not spend over what we brought in revenues. And again, that goes to great cost controls on the part of the staff, police department as well. So the Finance Committee met and discussed what to do with that unappropriated, unassigned fund balance. And given that we don't know that it's going to go in perpetuity, given that we have a potential economic downturn coming at some point, that the cannabis sector and cannabis revenue is a very volatile sector. And I'll just add a quick comment on this. We have the vaping issue that is killing people and really impacting the health of people nationwide has impacted our cannabis businesses. So there's an example of an unknown 2 months ago, 3 months ago, that's just come in and is going to impact our cannabis revenue stream. So it's those kinds of unknowns that concern me about the continuity of that revenue stream. So Roberto, myself, recommended to the committee that we not take this unassigned fund balance and build it into ongoing operations, but that we use it for one-time expenditures, such as purchasing capital outlay, in this case recommending solar panels be purchased for City Hall, paying down outstanding debt, and establishing reserves for specific purposes. The staff recommendation and the recommendation of the Finance Committee to this council is that that $1.446 million ending fund balance be used as follows. $150,000 of it be invested in the city's Section 115 trust to further fund our unfunded balance for our pension liabilities. $80,000 be appropriated to purchase and install solar panels. And I just want to highlight that this is not a contract award. We're going to go out separately, compete the contract award, come back with a fixed price that we hope is far less than $80,000, but we're recommending at this point the appropriation of $80,000 for the solar panels, and to add $1,216,942 to the reserve for economic uncertainty, bringing it to a total of a large number. I believe that's going to be, I can't even find it. It's on the second page. Thank you. Heavens. That would bring, it'll bring the reserve to $1,216,942,000, or approximately 25% of our current budget. Apologies. That was the recommendation of the Finance Committee to the Council. Just to highlight the Economic Uncertainty Reserve, that's a lot of liquidity in your Economic Uncertainty Reserve, but one of our biggest hits from the State Auditor's report based on 2016 was lack of liquidity. And so if we want to stay off the radar for a state audit, which we really hope to do, the recommendation is to increase that, that Economic Uncertainty Reserve to that number, which is 25%. The council's adopted policy goal is 15%. So we're going well above that for now. Should things unfold, should cannabis revenue continue, should the voters pass an extension, a permanent extension of the 1% sales tax, should the economy continue to go gangbusters, there certainly can be decisions made in the future about that $1.2 million to pay down debt or do other things. But right now it stays in that account. That's an investment account that's making decent interest for us, but locked away as a economic uncertainty reserve. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I just want to say the solar panels, I hesitate whenever, even at home, I don't like to just take my extra money and buy things, but I think that the solar panels in the long run is going to be a great investment. We will save money, you know, many years out. So I strongly agree with the recommendations.
Great. I agree with, well, obviously I was on the budget committee, so, but we did a lot of back and forth. What if we pay down the debt, because we do have debt out there, a lot of debt, and guess what, that debt is collecting interest, or at least a portion of it is. So the original $750,000 or $700,000, well, with the interest that it's already collected, now it's $900 million, or $900,000, $900,000. So, I mean, that is going to continue to grow. So my first instinct was, I'd rather, how much interest are we going to earn versus how much interest we're going to be collecting on our debt. But with the uncertainty over the next 6 to 9 months, I support putting our funds into the uncertainty fund until we see what the next 6 to 9 months bring. And then my first instinct is get rid of debt.
Any questions, comments?
The 1.2, this move to increase this liquidity is because this is one of the documents that was sent to the state. This is the 2018, which
We did. We sent it to the state.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
And based on council approval tonight or action tonight, we'll
Right.
send this document as well.
Excellent.
All right, I'll go out for public comment. No public comments? All right, public comment closed. We'll come back. I also was on the committee, and I am thrilled, to have that nice chunk of change to be able to put into the bank for literally a rainy day. It very much aligns with what the state comptroller talked about, making sure that we have enough reserves to just cover whatever may come up in the next year or so. And I'm also thrilled about the solar panels to help lower our greenhouse gas emissions for the city. So I think it's a win-win all the way around. So any motion?
I move that we accept the recommendation of staff for the ending fund balance disposition.
Okay.
And I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes unanimously.
Fantastic.
The last new piece of business is consider human resources consultant scope of work.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the action before you tonight is to consider approval of a HR, Human Resources Service contract in the amount of $20,000, not to exceed $20,000. Staff has gone out and found a very qualified Joint Powers Authority based public sector outfit that provides a range of services that municipalities use. In particular, their strength is HR, human resources. Their regional government services. They're the same company that Roberto actually is part of, our financial advisor. In looking at their costs and at their scope of work, they're competent and competitive. What this action will do tonight is allow us to bring them on board, have them go through our HR processes from onboarding to evaluations, to terminations, to pay, to our personnel files, and give us a solid look, which we just haven't done. We just have not done that here. And then give us a work program of items that we need to fix or improve. And then we'll work off that in a prioritized fashion. It'll also give us access to HR help. And as we've gone from a police department of 6 to a police department of 11, we brought on part-time help. Our public works employee is full-time. There are human resources issues that quite frankly need addressing, need oversight. We need to be compliant with the evolutions in the labor law at the state level, and this will help us do that. Happy to answer questions.
All right. Any council comments, questions?
I think that human resources laws are changing every year. I think this is just imperative that we get this done, and I think it will actually protect the city in the long run.
I agree. Excuse me. I think just for the protection of the city, we need to do this.
Any other
comments? All right, we'll go out for public comments. Any questions, concerns, comments? All right, we'll close public comment on this, and we'll come back and entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the recommendation that the city manager sign a contract for human resources services with Regional Government Solutions in an amount not to exceed $20,000.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously. No correspondence, and we're going to go into closed session. But before we do, any public comment on any of the closed session items? Public employee performance evaluation of our city manager, conference with labor negotiators, city attorney Alex Lorca, and conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to government code number 54956.9D4. One case. Yes.
Yes, good evening. Douglas Mackenzie Saucedo. I have questions about all of these. They seem to be on here every month or every time I look at one of these agendas. And when I used to have a performance evaluation, it was you're in and out. I don't know. Maybe yours is a complicated job, I suppose.
Thanks, Douglas. Anyone else? All right, so we're going to adjourn to closed session. Please finish all the cookies so we don't take them home. Have a happy and safe Thanksgiving. And of course, if you'd like to hang out, we will report out after the closed session. Thank you. Back in session. Consider amendment to city manager employment agreement.
Did you want to have me report out from closed session first? Thank you, Madam Mayor. With regard to the first two matters on the closed session agenda, direction was given to myself and will be the subject of the upcoming open session following the closed session. With regard to the third item, an update was provided to council. Direction was given to myself, but no reportable action was taken.
All right. Consider amendment to the city manager employment agreement.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With regard to item 13A, as a result of the labor negotiations, the council is proposing amendment number 2 to the city manager employment agreement between the city of Delray Oaks and Dino Pick. I'll briefly specify the amendments to the employment agreement, which is an additional 5 days paid vacation days per year. All vacation, sick, administrative, and bereavement leave identified in Section 8M of the employment agreement shall be credited on July 1st of every year. And with regard to all other provisions of the employment agreement, they remain the same.
All right, thank you.
So you will need a motion and take public comment per year.
All right.
Right.
A motion?
I move that we accept the amendment to the city manager's employment contract.
And Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, if we'll just note for the record, there is no public comment here. There's no public to comment. Right?
Sorry, did somebody second?
Second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. It's unanimous. Next meeting date is, we're having a special meeting Tuesday, December 17th at 6 p.m. There is no December 2019. Oh, sorry, wrong notes. We're adjourned.